gives it up, and Tsui lays it in.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
No good. Arizona with a prayer that will not go. And the Tigers of Princeton growl their way into round 2.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Noel. He sizes up Shigwe. Got him! A 3!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Clark in a straight jacket. Oh, he didn't need to do that. He threw it away.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
The lob, and that will do it. Do you believe it? For just the second time ever, a 16 beats a 1.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. Kind of a nasty, drizzly day here in Waco as Baylor football allowing media access here in the next, you hope, 45 minutes. Of course, it could force some of what they do indoors, and then if that's the case, then perhaps there's not going to be media access and eventually post-practice interviews available. A lot of construction going on over at Baylor with the new football operations building and so much more. And so here we are, 365 Sports, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak, and we're going to hear from Mike Martin. He's the head basketball coach at Brown University in the Ivy League. His thoughts about Princeton. His thoughts, he knows Ed Cooley very well, who's about to, of course, become the head coach at Georgetown. We'll hear from him. And yet another sports columnist, economist, media deals background and experience in Jim Williams from Forbes magazine today at 5 o'clock. Chuck King covers Florida Atlantic. What a run they've had in basketball. Tom Herman now is their football coach. So let's start with Baylor football. They start spring drills. We have discussed this a little bit. Travis wrote around with us last week as well. But here's what I'd like to know. How do you get that edge, that whatever that was a couple of years ago when you play with your hair on fire? That, you could say that's experience or just better players. Can they get that back? How do you get that back?
I think before they find the edge, they have to figure out what's potentially 8 new starters on offense. The entire offensive line is going to be new. So I think it kind of starts with them. I don't think they really had it last year like they did. They played fine. I just don't think that they played at the elite level they played at the year before. But, they've got 5 new starters in the offensive line. They're going to have a new tight end. They're going to have new wide receivers. There's potential that they have a new quarterback if Sawyer Robertson, beats out Blake Shapen. I don't think that that's likely, but even still, there are so many different things to have before they can get that edge back. They got to figure out who's actually going to be leading the way to get it.
Well, I think they kind of play hand in hand, don't they? The people who are leading the way are probably the ones establishing your edge for you. So I think that last year that they had quote-unquote leaders, but they weren't leaders in the way that an Abram Smith or a Jalen Petrie or a Terrell Bernard or those guys were the year prior. They also hadn't been on campus for 5 and 6 years like those guys had. So I don't know. It's an interesting mix of guys, of veterans, of young guys, of transfers. And not just we sprinkled in a couple of transfers. They brought in 10 transfers. That's significant. That's a number of players. That's half of a recruiting class that you brought in that's played 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 years of college football already elsewhere. So they're going to have to get the culture part of it down, and I'm sure that's what they've been working on, these last couple of months. I think just continuing to instill that and kind of who they are and their brand is going to be, heavily important, especially in mixing in these new guys and these new young guys. and, having them, know the ways along with the guys who have been on campus for 2, 3, and 4 years. But, yeah, they need somebody to step up and not just bark but have some bite with it. I don't think they had anybody really with any bite last year. I mean, they might have had some guys who on their own made some unique plays or on occasion made a dominant play, but they didn't have any dogs like the week in and week out type of guys who you knew no matter what, 4th down and inches, we know we have a chance. We know we have a chance. We might not stop them, but we know we have, and we believe that we can stop them. And I don't know that they always believed that last year, or at least, even if they did, just the execution piece wasn't there. So new faces on the staff, new faces on the roster, some old faces that we learned from the roster that's come out. Grayson pointed out some guys who are no longer on there. So it's going to be very interesting because I do feel like there is a unique pressure on Dave Aranda this year, not to go and win the Big 12 again or reach 10 wins necessarily. But I said this earlier. I think Garrett agreed with me. I think Grayson did too. But last year was hard to watch. I know that teams have down years and teams go 6 and 7, but that was hard to watch after a while. I mean, would y'all agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, it just felt like you were running in mud.
It was a little bit better version and not quite as awful as 2020.
But 2020 had reasons.
Yeah.
It had more reasons as to why that was like the way that it was, I feel like. Whereas last year, there was some reasons for why they weren't as good as a Big 12 championship team, and a lot of that had to do with some of the names that I just mentioned. Tyquan Thornton you could add in there, and others as well. But you could never get fully behind this team, if that makes sense. You could never fully just start to all right, let's ride, baby. We just won a game. It's like next week, loss, and then another loss, and then you'd win a game, and then you'd lose again. It was so up and down week by week that it was like walking on pins and needles, wondering what this team was going to show up and perform like, and that was tough. So I'm hoping that now they kind of got that bad taste out of their mouth. Now we know a bit more of the reason why. Like clearly behind the scenes, even on the staff, there was some level of a lack of chemistry. They've changed that over. Let's see if that makes a big difference. I believe that it should, and obviously they believe that it should as well.
All right, so we have that, and Craig will be in and out today with so there's no off the radar, but he'll be headed over to the Baylor football practice facility in a little bit, and of course they may be indoors. We'll see what happens there, so we'll start to have some of that, and then after practice there's immediate availability at times, depending on whether it's Dave Aranda and or coaches and or players who will be a part of it. And by the way, I sent an email last night. I was going to send it on Sunday night, but I sent it last night. I tweaked a little bit to all 14 schools, including Baylor, but all 14 schools, media relations, as far as trying to see, of the 14 schools, how many of the head coaches will get over the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks during the time that spring drills and eventually spring games are being done. And then, of course, we'll check in with UTSA, with Jeff Traylor, and we'll check in with others, including, of course, the other coaches around the country who we will get on this show.
Yeah, it'll be fun to get into spring ball. I do want to go ahead and tell you now, because it's a conversation we'll be having off air. I finally did look up. We did not have any of the assistants on this time last year.
Okay.
We haven't talked to Eric Mateos or Jeff Grimes in like a couple years.
Well, no, we had them. Did we not have them not last year at all?
I don't think so. Not based on my note. They might have done a practice session, but we did not talk to them on this show.
Yeah, I'm trying to
the last time I looked, Mateos, Grimes, that was all like March, April of 21. Based on as far as on this show. Now they definitely have done a post-practice session, but that's not what you asked me about.
No, I asked about segments where they appeared on the show.
We haven't had that in a couple of years. So that I wanted to pass that along because we've been talking about that because we're trying to make our plans for spring. And now that it's on my mind, but I did mention the roster attrition, and I know that there's probably going to be more of this, but one name that is of interest because it's been talked about a lot, Tay McWilliams, no longer on the roster. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but he obviously had at least one head injury last year and then missed most of the year, and everybody was kind of wondering, what his status was. Well, apparently he's not on the spring roster that was released. There were some other names as well that are like Javon Gibson, young wide receiver, no longer on the roster. So that's what you start to get this time of year, and that's just of note. But, yeah, that answers a question that I know had been out there for a while.
All right.
I think it was going to be tough for him to really crack the rotation, looking at what they have. I mean, like, just in the top two guys, Richard Reese and Dominic Richardson, now you've got guys that, have played a whole lot more than you have. And that's not even getting into who else is there. right? So, yeah, there's just a lot of that would have been tough. So, doesn't surprise me, especially given off the fact that, he had the concussions last year and all that he went through.
So you think he's out? Do you think he's no longer with Baylor because of health, or do you feel like he just needs a breath of fresh air?
I think it probably all intersects together.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd rather not speculate.
No,
I don't know.
I agree.
I think just based on what we saw last year, if you were to be told that head injuries did it, would you be surprised? Absolutely not. So, I don't know. Maybe he pops up on a spring roster somewhere else, but that was clearly something he was struggling with. Is something you don't play around with, especially as a running back. So, yeah, I don't know, but that clearly could be why. But he was one of those names, as I mentioned, Javon Gibson, young wide receiver, who I really had high hopes for. Grayson, I think, also mentioned Cisco Caston on there, no longer on there as well, and Victor Obi, the linebacker from previously Kilgore College a couple years back, no longer on the roster as well. So everybody who's following college football, I'm sure, is doing the same thing and seeing the spring roster released and cross-checking it from last year and the early enrollees and all of that. So those are just a few of the names that have been notable.
I'm glad you guys did that because I did not until I actually had one in my hand, but I'm glad you did that. Garrett, I sent you a tweet, but don't worry about it because Willis Reed, did we just not bring him up a week ago?
We did.
Report now that he's died at the age of 80. We brought him up because of the Game 7 1970 NBA Finals. He was very badly injured, found a way to make an entrance right before the game started, played like maybe a minute or two or three, hit a couple of shots, did not play the rest of the way, but it did lead the Knicks emotionally to surge in Game 7 to beat the Lakers to win their first ever world title. And here we are, like a week after we mentioned him, he passed away earlier today. All right. Also, I sent a couple of tweets or text out to those who covered the Pac-12. There was supposed to be or is supposed to be a CEO meeting today in the Pac-12. We've been told that today could be a big day. And I don't know. I did send one text out to Jason Shear. He covers Arizona, saying that he hadn't heard anything and he may not really know anything until perhaps he starts to check and check on some things until sometime later this evening. But this was a day that was reported with a CEO meeting among the Pac-12, and that it could be a big day. No one said it would be, but it could be. So there's that as of today. And we're going to get into an article from John Wilner, who wrote an article in the Wilner Hotline with a couple of notes that he said on the pending, imminent, whatever it might be, Pac-12 media deal.
Yeah, and that day being today is just simply from John Canzano putting out there last week that he felt like it could be a big day because the CEOs were getting together, and then he speculated on, whether or not they would possibly announce expansion or finalize the fact that they were going to or were not going to expand, and perhaps we heard that, or perhaps they finalized the TV deal, and perhaps they do that at some point today. I haven't had time to look around much and really been focused more on spring ball. But, yeah, that was where that comes from, so we'll see. But I haven't seen anything, I don't know about y'all, that really has touched on that much. I don't know that there's been any reporting on it, but yeah, we'll see what happens there, I guess.
I tend to think it's kind of what the Utah AD said the other day, that they still, have a ways to go on the media deal. It's probably more of a fact-finding mission today. And again, the timetable is only, in fans' minds, it's now, but clearly in the Pac-12's mind, they've got some time, and realistically, they don't have to get anything done, until the contract is actually physically up.
I think what one of the comments was that the dominoes could start to take effect today with the CEO meetings. All right, so I sent this to Paul. I sent this to Craig. Article from John Wilner in the Wilner Hotline on the Pac-12 as they start to. Who knows? And this is not to pick on anybody, but just kind of where are they? We'll have Jim Williams, who wrote an article in Forbes magazine. Will Amazon or Apple TV Plus offer the Pac-12 a deal that they can't say no to? So we'll have that. But John Wilner, Pac-12 media rights, Kliavkoff under pressure as saga nears conclusion, and presidents express optimism. But reading this, he didn't show like this was going to happen. But it does seem to me, and I'm not trying to pick his brain, we'll get him on, but it does seem to me that there was part of this that hey, did he in fact misread the room or the information? And that could be something that has created this as well.
Well, I think, I mean, we've talked about it at length. There's no doubt that Kliavkoff misread every step of the way on media rights negotiations and where people were going to go and all of it. And, you know, look, the Big 12, like, that's why it's funny that the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have been so adversarial. Well, fan bases have, but because they've gone through the same thing. The Big 12 was just lucky theirs happened first, because if it was reversed and USC and UCLA had gone to the Big 10 and then Texas and OU said, well, hell, that's a good idea. Heck of an idea. You know, let's go to the SEC. Then the Big 12 is probably having the same problem right now. But I do think that, you know, they brought him over because, and this mentioned in this article, is like he was with MGM. And, you know, had all these different, like, backgrounds and ideas and things they could do, especially helping their media rights, considering the Pac-12 networks had largely failed. So here you have him in there, and every step of the way he's kind of made the wrong choice, whether it's been, you know, the fake alliance, which was just Kevin Warren getting to do what he wanted to, you know, not really reading the room on USC and UCLA and that, and then, of course, thinking that, like, well, the Big 12 will just wait for us to get ours done, and then they cut in line, which there is no line. We talked about that last week, and all that kind of, you know, pins them down into the situation they're in right now, where who knows what the interest is. The economy has changed a lot in the last 12 months, which affects, you know, the media partners.
Okay, but let's get to the tone of this compared to, we know about Kliavkoff and the misreading the room, but the tone of this, was it different to you and Craig, either one of you guys?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like, you know, it allowed more for, you know, well, this is all what we know, but there's a chance that all this is just the public face of it, and behind the scenes is more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I would say just real quick on your Kliavkoff comments. I mean, definitely the alliance was a misstep. He also was handed a bag of poo from was Larry Scott. So, you know, we do have to take that in consideration. I do think he deserves maybe a little bit of a break on the USC-UCLA thing, because that's not something that just happens overnight. You know, like, that wasn't something that, like, oh, that never would have happened if not for Kliavkoff. But you're right. Like, I mean, the whole, like, not thinking for a second that maybe the Big 12 might jump in front of them. And, I mean, who would have predicted that? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, like, some of it definitely on him, some of it not. Regardless, I mean, they still seem to be positive overall. I think from the tone of the article, Wilner's hedging his bets a little bit. And, I mean, just, you know, probably because he doesn't know. I mean, I don't think that he quite knows. I think that, you know, one day you wake up and you feel like maybe you're hearing that it's a done deal and that it's absolutely going to be this number or greater or whatever channel it's going to be on, and feeling like things are going good. And maybe, you know, a couple days later, it's not quite what you heard, or maybe you're hearing it differently from somebody else. There's a lot of people involved. So I think he's kind of leaving everything open to possibility. So hedging his bets maybe a little bit, but I think that's because a guy who's pretty plugged in doesn't know. And I think, you know, of the people who cover the Pac-12, I think it was the other John that was far more emphatic in his recent reporting about, you know, what it could look like and what it could be and those types of things, and was the one that was really pointing towards today as a day where the dominoes could fall, as you said and as he said. I forgot about that line. So, yeah, I think he's somebody who's wondering, like the rest of us, John Wilner, what's going to happen. And there's reasons he's hearing to believe that it could be positive, but there's also reasons that he's hearing that, you know, maybe not so much. And so, yeah, I think we're just all along for the ride.
Well, and so there we are with that. And so there may be, today may come and go without really anything new, other than the fact that there's a meeting, and they hopefully will at least be able to get some more information. We'll see. A lot of presidents and others talked last week, and that was brought up by John in his Wilner hotline, and said, in fact, one of the comments he made about Robbins, who's the president at Arizona, last week, those sounds of silence morphed into Robert Robbins' 2023 media tour, a series of on-the-record interviews by Arizona's president with both regional and national outlets. His overall tone was optimistic. He needed to see the final offer before making a decision on Arizona's conference affiliation, but expressed confidence in the outcome. And he said, there's no question Kliavkoff knew that Robbins was going to be saying something, was briefed on the latest news from the negotiations before he spoke to the media. If not the specifics, then at least the general tone and trajectory. So the question is, what is going to happen? No different than the question was 9 months ago, what is going to happen? But there's no way we would be waiting 9 months from now. This has to come sooner or later, and it may not be until sometime in the month of April.
Yeah, and if that happens, that happens. And I'll reiterate, it's not so much waiting to watch the pack die or, grab another lifeline or anything like that. I mean, it's the implications that this has as well. And it's just an interesting topic. I think you can find plenty of people just discussing realignment without getting into the choosing of sides. They just find it to be a fascinating thing because of, again, implications that it can have along the way. I do think what was interesting to see from him was, for example, he commented on, I just had it. He mentioned, the LA schools and how that was unexpected, and yet I've heard from people on the other side that no, they totally knew that was going to happen. Or no, that wasn't a surprise at all. They had been rattling the cage. But here's John Wilner, who I'm supposed to believe is the guy, right? And he's saying that it was unexpected, but others disagree. He's also asking a lot of the questions that everybody else is asking, even though we're apparently stupid for asking them, whether that be the amount of streaming, whether that be amount of money, whether that's enough to settle down feelings. So I appreciate that he can look at it and view it not as like, well, if I don't look at this positively, then I'm anti this, and if I don't look at it negatively, then I'm pro that. It's like, no, he's asking the exact same things we're asking. He's interested just like we are in the length and the GOR and the money and the exposure, and just like we're wondering, he's wondering how those things are going to matter in the long run, because you can say what you want to about whatever's going on behind the scenes, and again, I think we all agree that this just stays pat ultimately. But if enough things do add up, then yeah, there is, I think, no matter how positive you are, if that money's low, that exposure's not great, those things add up. But he's wondering like all of us, so I appreciate that.
One of the things that I thought could be of interest is we hear about Apple Plus and we hear about Amazon. What happens if, in fact, Fox right now is not a part of it, but they could always jump back in it? But what happens if ESPN decides they're not interested?
In especially in being the linear partner, then they might have to do the all streaming thing, which I thought about this today, especially after I read Jim's column that you sent. So I'm an Apple TV Plus subscriber because I like several of the things that are on it, and it's relatively cheap. So I have it. But I don't know if that would – I mean, if you're a Pac-12 fan, you're going to get it. So they've guaranteed themselves at least that the Pac-12 fans will get it, and it's an easier way to get and watch the networks than it would have been on their previous, incarnation of the networks that never got distributorship. But if I'm an Apple TV Plus subscriber and there's not a particular Pac-12 game I'm going to watch, am I going to go find it? The number better be pretty high for me to forget about the exposure. So the number wouldn't, to me, to not have a linear TV partner right now, would have to not only beat the Big 12, but be a little bit significant, not like $3, $4, $5 million, like maybe $8, $9 million more than the Big 12. That way I could say, well, yes, we're not going to have the exposure that they will on linear television, but we're getting more money, and there's 10 or 12 of us now, depending on expansion, and that will make me feel better. So I don't know.
All right, there's that. And by the way, speaking of revenue, today Michael Smith in the Sports Business Journal, the Big 12 closes in on a data rights deal. Big 12 Conference finalizing its first revenue-producing data and statistics partnership. Industry sources saying a decision on a data partner expected in the coming 2 to 3 weeks, requiring approval by the Big 12's board, given the conference's deep relationship with Endeavor, which has advised the Big 12 on many issues, including its media rights. Sources say IMG Arena is the frontrunner for the data rights deal. And so here we are again with the possibility of adding. You have the Pro Day that will make some money. Not sure how much, but will make revenue. You have this, the possibility of something that they do with basketball, whether it's a possibility of what, like an in-season or preseason, like Big 12 NIT or something like that. Another way for them to make money, but this is something here with the data rights deal and the Big 12 announcing that here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, the interesting part of this will be, is this just what they do with data rights anyway and sell the official statistics to media and fan sites and all of that? Or is this also selling data to casinos? Is this because the Pac-12 is trying to do the same thing too? I'm sure everybody's going to, but if colleges, these are colleges now, that will decide to sell information to casinos, that is a huge domino to fall. And the problem I see with that just currently is the fact that, as far as, it stands right now, sports betting's not legal everywhere, especially not in the state that the Big 12 offices are located in, and the most of its schools are located in. Sports gambling is not legal. But if they vote to do this with a plan on getting casinos in, that's some sway that, maybe some politicians will go, hey, let's get this voted on.
By the way, the Pac-12 has a deal with Tempest, and so they already have their data deal, along with the Mid-American has one as well, as far as data partnerships, and so the Big 12 trying to add one here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, a couple of basketball notes to get to. This is one that Jeff Goodman, the Field of 68, UNT, North Texas head coach Grant McCasland, has emerged as Texas Tech's top target after the Red Raiders have swung for a few big names and missed. This according to the Stadium. North Texas plays tonight in the NIT against Oklahoma State. He, of course, 6 years, former Baylor assistant, has been on the Texas Tech staff before, and, of course, took UNT to the NCAA tournament back the year that also Baylor won the national title. Ed Cooley, it's official. He, of course, is now at Georgetown. So what happens to Rick Pitino's replacement at Iona? The guy that just made a run at Fairleigh Dickinson. Tobin Anderson will be the next head coach, according to our good friend John Fanta. He is now going to be the new head coach to replace Pitino at Iona. Michael Martin is going to be our guest at 4. He's the Brown University head basketball coach, knows Cooley very well, and maybe gives us a little idea of what all this movement means. Plus, he can talk Princeton basketball with us today at just after 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I think Texas Tech is wise to hire Grant McCasland. Scott Drew culture in a place that really cares about their basketball is something that you've seen explode at Kansas State, who's in the Sweet 16 in year one. I think someone would be foolish not to bring Paul Mills up a level. Look, and Grant did a great job at UNT, has done a great job at UNT. He'll do a really good job, I believe, at Texas Tech. But that would be the two big dog sports have gone, essentially through Baylor to get their head coaches at Texas Tech now.
Yeah, they have. That's pretty amazing, given some of the culture comments over the years at different times. But it's kind of been interesting to see how that's evolved. And good for Grant McCasland, and good for Scott Drew as his coaching tree, sprouts some new leaves off one of the strong branches that was already created with McCasland previously. I'm sure he loves it. I'm sure he's very happy for Grant McCasland. I'm sure he's very happy for Jerome Tang, but I'm sure he also would love it if they'd go coach somewhere outside the Big 12, like McCasland was doing, to not have to face his buddies and the guys who know him so well and vice versa. You're looking at perhaps a quarter of the league being Baylor staffers together at one point in time, and there's probably guys I'm missing, and of course you could draw that as well. You mentioned McCasland was at Tech previously, so you could probably do that a lot of ways, but from our chair where we're sitting, we view him as a guy from Baylor who was on Scott Drew's staff. So
he's a Baylor alum too. So
Baylor alum, there you go. So I don't know if I knew that or not, but that definitely hammers it home even more. But I'm sure Scott Drew's happy, just don't want to keep seeing guys. It's like, who's next? Paul Mills going to go West Virginia? We're going to get Alvin Brooks go on to Oklahoma State. How far is this thing going to go? But no, good for him, and that's a great hire if that's who they make. The only issue I would take is if I'm Grant McCasland, I'm not retweeting that since it also says after missing on a bunch of other names. I'm curious, is that Pitino? I know that was thrown out there just by Tech fans because that's what everybody does during a coaching search. Although that just location-wise, nobody ever thought that would be all that realistic for Pitino to head out to West Texas. But I'm curious who else maybe was in mind. I haven't really looked much on social media for what the scuttlebutt has been. But that's a great hire regardless.
Well, look, Chris Beard was an up-and-coming name, but I wouldn't have called him I wouldn't have said that when they hired Chris Beard. I was like, oh, man, that was a a huge swing there. That was a smart move at the time of where Chris Beard was in his career to bring him in at Texas Tech. And look, Mark Adams was the top assistant on that staff and stayed and took over. That obviously ended the way that it did. So, yeah, sometimes it's not always about, like, getting the big name. I mean, that some of the most successful coaches are the ones who weren't a big name at one time. At one point, Nick Saban, nobody knew who he was. Right? At one point, nobody knew who Bobby Knight was. It's just a guy that they hired, and they're like, oh, well, who's this guy? And then they have huge success.
Yeah, Bob Knight was at Army at one point, and, of course, Chris Beard did rise up the ranks pretty quickly and then was even at UNLV but never really was there and took the job at Tech, and what a whirlwind it's been for him. Tech, Austin with Texas, and now the head coach at Ole Miss. One more note, Baylor women losing last night on the road to UConn. Their season ends. UConn moves on and into the Sweet 16. Nikki Cowan was a part of the postgame along with Caitlin Bickle and Jaden Owens. I thought, honestly, I know there was a time when Baylor women in the Sweet 16 was a given, and I thought this year's team, considering a couple of players that could really never play with Blackwell and also Edwards, the transfer from Kentucky, that was a hell of a – they played well last night. They just ran into a team that was better, bigger, stronger, and also on their home court.
Yeah, hopefully this makes sense to you guys, but they were dealing with a couple of key injuries this year. They definitely prevented them from being at full strength, and I feel like, they made a positive step forward this year. I do think at some point you got to break through into that Sweet 16, though, like sooner rather than later. And it can't be a situation where like next year it's like, but Felicia got hurt.
No. Next year with Edwards and also Blackwell back, plus who they have, the freshmen got some experience this year. I would think it would be an incredible disappointment if they don't get into the Sweet 16 or deeper.
Regardless of injuries.
Regardless. Your roster should be deeper, overcome it. They did have some things this year.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's back-to-back years, round of 32, and Nikki's even discussed it. Let her have her own roster. Well, she's about to have completely her own roster, although she wishes she had Caitlin Bickle back for another year and others.
That's a loss, but it was definitely a solid season overall. I mean, getting that come from behind win over Alabama. Had they not gotten that, then I think we'd be talking very differently about the season, because the exit in the first round would have been awfully disappointing no matter what you were dealing with. But next year they should be pretty well loaded up for Baylor, no pun intended. And I think there should be expectations, rightfully so.
All right, when we come back, our first guest today will be talking about and discussing, analyzing what's going on with Florida Atlantic, their men in the Sweet 16, and then also Tom Herman, the football coach there. And then just after 4 o'clock, Mike Martin, head coach at Brown University, on Princeton's run into the Sweet 16. Craig will be in and out with the show, headed to Baylor football practice. We have Jim Williams, Forbes and Zinger columnist, on the Amazon and Apple Plus and the Pac-12, and a little bit of how he looks at things with what is going on with the possibility of a heavy or almost all exclusive streaming, some of his knowledge on that too. So much to get to. This is 365 Sports. Bear Ridge Golf Course on 84 in just outside of the southern part of Waco and Woodway. They have a women's golf clinic coming up. With and the clinic will be with the wedges, putting, and hitting your irons. Public $40 for the clinic. The members will pay just $30. There's a men's clinic coming up, in fact, this Friday from 4 o'clock until 5:30. Class limited to 5. So that means you're going to have literally hands-on instruction from the pros there at Bear Ridge. And that, of course, coming up on Friday. There's a junior clinic sponsored by Bush's on March the 25th. On Saturday afternoon. So Bear Ridge, Mike Williams is the general manager. They got a great group of pros inside the clubhouse. I play there a lot. They do have some issues going on right now with their greens with Poana. They're trying to deal with that. It's kind of just the way it is. So there is an issue there. But the amount of work that's been put into that course the last couple of years by that group has been phenomenal, and hopefully everything turns the corner here at a nice place, a great layout, a bunch of great golf friends that I'm with on the weekend at Bear Ridge on Highway 84 in Waco.
Just as teams are celebrating on the courts, your mountaintop experience begins during the Jeep Celebration event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with total values up to $5,500 on second and third row options, or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with up to $5,000 in total values. And if we don't have exactly what you want, we can help you build the new custom Jeep of your dreams. It's the Jeep Celebration event at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker room, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Coach of the Year candidates are down to the finalists. Naismith has announced Matt Painter, whose Purdue Boilermakers were knocked out abruptly by Fairleigh Dickinson. Kelvin Sampson, Houston, into the Sweet 16. Shaka Smart, Marquette was just knocked out. We've even mentioned Smart's postseason struggles dating back to 2014 when SFA took out Virginia Commonwealth, but had a great season other than the postseason. And then there he is, Jerome Tang, Kansas State. You knew he would be a part of the conversation. Now, a lot of people are like, wait a minute, Painter's gone and Smart's gone. The voting is before the tournament begins. It's a regular season, no difference in any other league. It does not include the postseason.
Okay, I understand that to an extent. I also have a beef with it when it comes to the Heisman Trophy, but I get it's a regular season award. But still, I feel like if Matt Painter wins that, like, doesn't that feel just a little odd, with the quick exit? Even though he had the body of work, I understand that. But if Jerome Tang gets to, like, the Elite Eight and Matt Painter with this top-ranked team gets bounced in the first round again, that's why I don't like the whole voting before the postseason.
Well, it's a great example.
And look, we'll always have the Reggie Bush, Vince Young argument on that, because you will have those instances where the top two Heisman candidates do wind up playing each other at some point. And then the one who lost, could win the game and in spectacular fashion. And I don't know, like, that was one of the hardest, if you go back in Heisman vote history, that was probably one of the tougher ones if you really thought about it. If you had moved that after, you're like, well, nothing's really changed my mind about Reggie Bush.
Yeah, you say that, but 784 first-place votes to 79.
Yeah.
We also live in Texas.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Vince Young wasn't the best player, because it would be a hellacious argument, and still is, but he won by nearly 1,000 votes.
Yeah, I think that being in Texas gave us two different viewpoints of, one, we knew better than somebody who wasn't watching as closely how good Vince Young was. Whereas maybe if you live out in Los Angeles or you live out in Portland or elsewhere, you're maybe seeing USC a bit more. And so you're fascinated by Reggie Bush and not realizing how good the young guy down in Austin is. But, yeah, and we also live here, so we also were hit over the head with Vince Young far more than we were with Reggie Bush. But that's one of those where I truly don't think you could have gone wrong with either one of those. Yeah. Either one of those would have been totally fine in my book. I wouldn't have argued it either way, and that's even before the national championship game. Vince Young was freaking insanely good.
Okay, one more thing. Reggie Bush won by nearly 1,000 votes. Third place was Matt Leinart, who had 800. He was a overwhelming third place, and there's got to be some of those votes he took away from Reggie Bush, and he still won by 1,000 votes.
Yeah, but you do wonder, like, if you wait till after that, like, this is not. And I just think every other award they give after, right? Or like you're voting like I guess not, because they do it in the middle.
Like Major League Baseball's most valuable player is not anything to do after 162 games. They're going to have Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, right? All these guys who are unbelievable in the NBA, but the voting will be sent in before they start the postseason.
Yeah, and like I get all that, and it's just in college football, it seems like for the Heisman,
you wonder if it's going to change now because there might be as many as 4 games.
Well, look,
I think it should probably, yeah.
And you're not going to have as much time. Like, there's not as much downtime between it, so your vote might look differently a lot faster, right?
I would have voted perhaps differently had the bowl games and others counted. I would have, and there was a lot of complaints about Stetson Bennett. Oh my God, Stetson Bennett. But you know what? He did what he did. I don't think he would have ever won it this year.
I don't think anybody believed he was the best player in college football.
No one did. But when you really look at the ones that were there, you had a lot of maybes. You didn't have some that were automatics. There were a lot of maybes, and I think Stetson Bennett was also a part of the conversation because some guys just didn't maybe meet the expectations of what we had.
Yeah.
Like Bryce Young had a great year, but not the year he had before because of what Alabama did not, because they were a part of it, but never really truly a part of the national championship picture.
I mean, the right guy won in my book, so I'm not really worried about this year's Heisman, although I definitely understand and agree with your points. But, as far as the postseason voting goes, I mean, I think if you're going to have a college football playoff, and this is just thinking about this for literally 30 seconds at this point, but if you are going to have somebody who's going to potentially play 4 more games and they're all going to be against top 25 or top 15 teams on the way to a national championship, and you're going to weigh the conference schedule more than perhaps a 4-game run to a national title, I think that's a little weird. A bit. Then again, like you pointed out, they do that everywhere else for the most part. So maybe it just stays as is, not to mess with tradition. And I could understand that. But yeah, it does feel like it's a regular season MVP versus just an overall league MVP.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they'll do like they do it. They have a championship MVP. I don't know what they'll do, but there could be as many as 2, 3, or 4 games after the Heisman Trophy voting is over at the end of the year, early in December. We're now joined on the 365 Sports Hotline. Mike Martin coming up just around the corner from Brown University. But Chuck King covers Florida Atlantic. What a run for the Owls into the Sweet 16, and a little bit on Tom Herman eventually as well. Chuck, what's it like? What has this done for that area, for the campus, and for the athletic department?
It's kind of woke everybody up, really. FAU basketball never really had a big following. They've had a couple of good years in the past, but it's a relatively small arena. It rarely sells out, but this year came along kind of improbably. But, at one point they had the longest winning streak in the nation. They won 30 games. They never won more than, a 20-game victory. A 20-game win season was, unheard of almost. And the fans are really getting behind it, and I'm seeing all kinds of tweets about people who are heading up. I can't wait to go to New York to see the game, and who probably may not even gone to a basketball game this year. So it's improbable, and it's been fun.
Well, and look, did you kind of get early on when, they beat Florida, who I know this is not a banner year for the Gators, by their basketball standards, but when you beat a team like Florida and then you start just rattling off win, that this team wasn't only just a tournament team, but was one that could do something special?
The thing about being around FAU so much is that they have these bursts of athletic excellence. But then they usually aren't very long-lived. And so you kept waiting for this kind of to fall apart. And, all right, we'll get into the conference plays. What's going to matter? All right, they're kind of rolling through the conference, and then they finally get a setback. Let's see how they respond to that. As somebody who's followed them for a long time, once you really started to look at the team, you saw that this team does a lot of things well. And this could really go far. I don't think anybody would have predicted a Sweet 16 run, but it was just getting to the tournament was a huge accomplishment, and this is all gravy for most FAU fans. And I would think, I know the team wouldn't say, hey, we're just glad to be here, but looking back on it, I'm sure we're going to be remembering this for quite a while.
What is the best moment in your recollection when it comes to FAU and in sports, in athletics?
In all of athletics?
Mm-hmm. Is this approaching that?
Yeah, it's memorable. The baseball team, head coach John McCormick has had the team, it's a perennial NCAA tournament team. And they actually, that was under Kevin Cooney, they went to a super regional. One of the more amazing baseball games I've ever seen was an elimination game against number 1 North Carolina that went, I think it was 14 innings, and it was just FAU hit a grand slam in the 9th to send it there. Football, the youngest team ever to go to a bowl game, to win a bowl game. Howard Schnellenberger was the program founder, so there were some high points there. FAU did beat Miami in a basketball game back around, it was in the early 2000s at FAU. That was one of the biggest moments, and they'd been to an NCAA tournament once before, but nothing really came of it. So yeah, this is when you start running down the short lists. Lane Kiffin winning a Conference USA championship and going to some bowl games. This run is going to be close to the top.
So how do you feel they match up with a pretty darn good Tennessee team on this week?
I think not particularly well, but I don't think that's an indictment. I don't think that most schools match up particularly well with Tennessee. They outmuscled Duke. FAU doesn't have the size and the bulk that Duke does, but FAU plays solid basketball, and so they're gonna force Tennessee to do what Tennessee can do. Do what they do well. If Tennessee doesn't do what they do well, then FAU is going to be able to hang with them, I think, because they do a lot of the little different parts well. They can shoot, they can rebound, even though they're generally a smaller team. They play good defense. They close out well on 3-pointers, and generally, the old cliche, they don't beat themselves. They're very well coached.
So, to me, you have these stories, and Furman was for a little bit, and Fairleigh Dickinson was for a little bit. Now, Princeton, of course, now, and Florida Atlantic kind of carry that banner and towards this Cinderella. Do you kind of get that impression that will this allow Florida Atlantic to do more if they keep making this run? Does this give them a chance to have even more oomph and build better stuff on the campus?
It might. I mean, they're moving to the American Association next year, so they're stepping up, especially in basketball, to a level that they haven't previously been anywhere close. So this is well timed. I thought the interesting thing, the Cinderella, the team that everybody rallies behind, that should have been FAU in theory in that semifinal game, in the second round game. But, they ended up playing the villain because of the way FDU was in there in the 16th seed. So it should have been like a great moment in the sun for FAU. And some people walked away like, oh, man, I can't believe that almighty FAU team ruined FDU series. So, but, yeah, I think that it's certainly something to build on. And they've been making incremental improvements to the arena. The campus, they've done a great job of getting the students out, which wasn't always the case. It's not a very big arena. It's sold out. It's only about 3,000 seats. So it should be a lot easier to fill than it's proven to be. But winning begets fans, especially in South Florida. South Florida loves a winner.
I grew up in Fort Myers. It's definitely very true, Chuck, and how fans kind of flock. How much does, this is just me out of curiosity, being a native, the surrounding area and the local city in Boca kind of take to them?
Well, for the longest time, FAU was looked at as a commuter school. It's only recently, last couple decades, that there's really put an emphasis on bringing new dorms to campus and the community involvement. It's certainly, Boca Raton is not a college town. And one of the write-ups this year, early in the basketball season, referred to FAU as being in Del Boca Vista, a Seinfeld fan, which is why you'll notice that there's a cardboard cutout of Kramer in a lot of the shots that people were bringing to the games. So a little Seinfeld reference there. But as the city gets bigger, a city gets younger. It used to be purely a retirement area, and so now the city is coming around to the things that I think the school has to offer. And I think it'd be nice to see it follow through into football and see it's only a 30,000 seat football stadium that has never sold out. So there's plenty of room to grow still.
Can you try to explain for anyone who's never been to Boca Raton how beautiful, and what you said, the campus 3 miles from the ocean?
Yeah, the football stadium on the sideline it's Howard Schnellenberger Field, has a sign that reads 1.8 miles to the beach, pointing east. I was glad that you called, because I was sitting on my front patio with my neighbors. And I'm wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and I needed to go get these jeans off because it was too hot sitting out there in the sun. So you brought me back inside where my windows are open, and there's a nice breeze. So I appreciate you guys calling me.
Well, I'm glad to have you as well.
Chuck, is Tom Herman going to be able to fill that football stadium?
I don't know that Tom Herman has anything to do with it, to be honest with you. I mean, Lane Kiffin didn't. Lane Kiffin won championships. Back-to-back bowl game. And it didn't fill. In order for quote unquote Tom Herman to fill it, I would think that he'd have to be here an awfully long time, winning for an awfully long time. And while I don't doubt that he can do that, I also don't doubt that if he's winning in his first couple of years, that he'll find another job, which is what happens at this level. That's nothing against any coach. So I think that it's going to take more than just a couple of years of sustained victories. And, I don't see why he can't do that, but I just think if he does, he won't be here that long.
Were you surprised when he was the one whose name came up? They've had some big names. You mentioned Kiffin and Snellenberger obviously started the program. Were you surprised when his name popped up?
Not particularly. I mean, when they landed Kiffin, I think that threw everybody nationally into like, oh well, they're really out there playing the game now. They're at least making the effort. Brian White, the athletic director, isn't the one that hired Kiffin, but he did bring in Willie Taggart, which is another name, and he's the one who was just replaced. So it was I would think, a crucial hire in the career of Brian White, because this is, Taggart didn't actually work out that well. So you get a guy with the pedigree of Herman in here. I mean, it's not hard to recruit to Florida. It's hard to recruit within Florida because there's so much competition. But I remember, and this goes back to basketball, Mike Jarvis, when he was the basketball coach, used to say that, you get anybody down here from, Detroit area, New York, Jersey, DC, you get those guys on campus, they're coming to the school because it's just that beautiful down here. So I don't see any reason why Herman, can't have him have some success down here.
All right. Have you, I mean, he's only been there a little while, but have you heard stories about how he can kind of be sometimes?
No, I haven't really been around the football area so much. I'm actually, part of my gig is that I end up covering spring training for the Associated Press. So nice. I'm around the ballpark this time, 45 straight days almost, and that's a blast. And plus, I now have a nephew who's playing in the minor leagues and got called up to a few games. So that's been kind of where I've been. But now getting ready to start spring practice, yeah. I think it's going to be a quick an immersion therapy there.
Yeah, you have a tough life, Chuck. You really do. I mean, you live in Boca Raton. You're covering FAU. They're making this run to the Sweet 16. You've got all this beauty and views and all that, and then you're covering baseball spring training. How much? I mean, how do you survive every day?
Well, I drink a lot. I find that to be helpful.
Yeah, no, that can kind of help overcome the tension of living in Boca Raton. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to put yourself out there sometimes.
Chuck, one more thing on the stadium. They've had some opponents come in to that stadium. Is it the opponent? If the stadium is full, is that kind of what you're saying? If they do get 25 or 30,000, it might be because Miami's playing there or someone like that.
Well, it helped. I mean, Miami was a big crowd when the one time Miami was here, and FAU gave them a real run for their money, and then a thunderstorm came in and delayed the game for 2 hours, and it was a night game. And by the time everybody got back on the field, the fans had all gone home, but it felt like a real college football Saturday atmosphere for the first time with the stadium. You got to remember also about FAU. Like I said, it was a commuter school. Mm-hmm. Most people down here have their allegiances to the big three. Miami, Florida, Florida State, or the people who have moved to Boca Raton. They went to school somewhere else also. So the football program had started in 2000. So they're only now getting to the point where the students who are coming into FAU, there's always been an FAU football program. So, they haven't experienced life without it. So I think it's just part of it's just the growing pains of being a relatively young program. Their on-campus stadium opened, I believe, in 2011. So that's only been on campus for a decade. It's just taking the slow time to build. The hope is that they're moving into the American Conference there. Mm-hmm. Is that there's going to be some bigger name teams, but the reality is that this is basically just formerly Conference USA teams, all that's left in there now. So Tulane, Memphis. Those are probably the bigger names that will be coming into Boca. They played Tulane in Howard Schellenberger Field before, and while Joe Montana came to that game because his son was playing quarterback for Tulane, not many others did. So
yeah, and it might mean even with some of those teams that have moved to the Big 12 and some of the realignment that could mean more money. More TV money because of the media deal the American Conference has that sort of feeds that athletic department to help FAU. It's interesting because you have Florida State, Florida, and you have Miami. And even Miami, for the most part, and Florida State aren't like 100-year traditions. They were all rejuvenated, what, Paul, in the 70s?
Yeah, 80s,
yeah. But you have UCF and the growth that they've shown, a monstrous school with the really have come a long way. USF trying to build something what they can do in Tampa. Then you have FAU. There's a lot of this, like all of the schools, or a lot of them, are very young if you really look at the history of college athletics. And Florida's a budgeting, just so much talent in that state. I think it's great that some people now have other opportunities to go play sports.
In 1993, I was finishing up my master's, and my mother called me to tell me that my little brother had decided where he was going to school to play baseball. And I said, where? And she said, Central Florida. And I said, where's that? It's now the second largest school in the nation, I believe, student undergrad population. It's in Orlando. For I'm sure many people listening don't know, and it's just exploded. It's a really kind of neat school with what that thing's done. So You're right. South Florida's facilities are amazing. FAU, if these TV deals hold out, we know that that climate is changing. As far as TV money, but FAU is continuing to grow, and they're committed to putting better facilities. They just opened the Schmidt Center, a football facility, basically. So, there's an opportunity here. And again, no shortage of players down here.
Mm-hmm. So, well, Paul knows about it as well, what Florida brings to the table. Thanks for your time, Chuck. Appreciate it. Somehow figure out how you cover spring training and live where you do.
Yeah.
We appreciate the access from Chuck King, owlaccess.com on Florida Atlantic men's basketball team that's into the Sweet 16, and Tom Herman, the head football coach in Boca Raton.
Yeah, how do I get that gig where I can cover spring training for 40?
And 45 days of spring coverage.
It is,
spring training.
When you and I left Ranger spring training those couple times, I don't think I've ever been, because like when we leave the Super Bowl, like it's a great week, right? It's a great week. We have a ton of fun. But Garrett was with us this year. I don't think it was like when we were at the airport, it was like, oh God, it's like, it's good. It's done. We had a good time, but I was ready to go home. When you leave sprint, like NCAA tournament is super fun, but it's such a rat race and like bouncing around. And then when you've covered it, you do, 4 weeks in a row, essentially with, if you go to Kansas City, then you go to, Syracuse, then you go to Sacramento, and then you go to where the Final Four is, say Houston or something like that, then you're kind of exhausted if you've
there's a lot of jet lag involved.
But when you leave spring training, whether you're in South Florida or you're in Arizona, you're on the plane going, like 3 or 4 more days wouldn't be the worst.
It's relaxing to get there, and it's relaxing coming back. And you really don't want to leave, and at the same time, you have to. And I was fortunate to go to baseball training camp, for probably 20 years. Paul went with me on a handful of times. Yeah. And it is as low, relaxed. It's very low maintenance to go cover baseball training camp and get to watch guys in the batting cage and much more. All right, Mike Martin, the head coach at Brown University, on Princeton's run. Craig just put a note up on Twitter. Baylor quarterback to transfer Sawyer Robertson wearing jersey 13 as they've opened up, of course, their spring drills. And a couple of notes Craig might drop in and add a couple of nuggets a little bit later on. Mike Martin from Brown University on Princeton, on Ed Cooley and more. And this is 365 Sports.
This is the soundtrack of life at Baylor.
There's a spark in your heart and a fire that's in your eyes.
If you're ready to take a big step toward a bright future, tap the banner below to check out the music video for a glimpse of life at Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Let
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of health care while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of health care has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
He is the winningest coach in Brown basketball history. I reached out to John Gallagher, our great friend, the former Hartford coach, who will hopefully be sometime very soon for next season a head coach in men's basketball again. I said, I need somebody that understands Princeton, that understands who they are in the Ivy League. He goes, there's no question. He did a double text with me. And Mike Martin, the head coach at Brown University, joins us here on 365 Sports. Coach, thank you. Let's first of all, we have to help, right? John Gallagher has to get back into men's basketball.
We have to help him, and if he says anything, it's true. So it's gospel. So, yeah, we got to get him back. He needs to be running a program. He's as talented as the coach I've been around, and, hopefully he'll be back on the sidelines next season.
When I brought up Mike earlier that we have had Coach Gallagher on since the Baylor national title game, the team, he said, I'm God help you. God help you. So, all right. So you know Princeton well. You faced Princeton, the Ivy League, and all of what you've done, and we're going to get into your program as well. Does this surprise you, what you've seen from them to get to the Sweet 16?
You know what, David? I'm not surprised. This tournament, everyone says it all year, every year. It's all about matchups. And, I thought that they could compete physically with most Power 5 and, high major teams, and they proved that against one of the most talented front courts in the country in Arizona in the first round. Now, Arizona didn't play their best, but Princeton has the ability to match up with you physically because they have size and strength and athleticism, and I think it shows how good our league is. quite frankly, Princeton won. They shared the Ivy League regular season championship, and then they won the tournament, which was played in their home gym. But going into this NCAA tournament, I think everyone would tell you that they were the second best team in our league. I mean, Yale, all the metrics would tell you that, Yale was the other co-champ. They were top 75, in every metric, in the net, the Ken Pom, the ESPN BPI. And, I think Princeton's success, again, shows how good our league is, and that there's a lot of really quality teams.
Are you surprised not only that they've won these two games, which you said that you kind of expected, but look, the Arizona game, they were in control late. It wasn't like they had to hit a buzzer beater. And then against Mizzou, they just throttled them. I mean, that to me, I think was the most surprising thing wasn't that they just won the games, but especially against Mizzou, that they were in control from the tip.
You know what? I wasn't, and I didn't expect them to necessarily win these two games. I expected them to be competitive, right? So I don't want to sit here and say, hey, I had them, I picked them to win two games. But what didn't surprise me was, how well they did against Missouri. I think, especially the way Princeton plays, their style on a quick turn. You know what I mean? Like a one-day prep, that can be hard to play against. So, their talent's really good. They have a player who I think every time he steps on the court is one of the top 2 or 3 players on the court in any game. And a lot of times he's the best player. He was the best player on Saturday against Missouri. That's the kid Tosan Awolma, who is on NBA teams, radars. And, has had, a lot of NBA, scouts coming to see him throughout his time at Princeton. He was Ivy League Player of the Year as a junior. I think all of that combined with the quick prep, the short prep for Missouri, that's a big ask for even a team as good as Missouri is.
When I think of Princeton basketball, and of course everyone remembers, I think it was the win, wasn't it, against Indiana, Bob Knight back in the day, but you almost think of being methodical. But this doesn't seem like this is a team that's methodical. This team seems like they can play various styles.
Yeah, different than the old school Princeton, run the shot clock for 45 seconds and the 35 seconds. Just really wait for you to make a mistake defensively and have a lot of low possession games. They're average in terms of their tempo. They're not like, they're not flying the ball up and down the court like, some other teams you might see, but they're not as methodical as, some of those old school teams. And, just really kind of free flowing. And, they play through a lot of old school Princeton concepts, but not in as, I guess strict or slow of a tempo as you've seen in years past. And again, the player that they have a lot of good players, but Awolma, Tosan Awolma, their playmaking forward who, is like 16 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds per game throughout the course of our league season. He's special. He's really, makes everyone around him that much better.
Coach, you mentioned Yale earlier, and I know that, for a lot of leagues in the country to get a second team in, they're going to have to expand the tournament. But do you think that, there needs to be a discussion about leagues like the Ivy League not just being a one-bid league anymore?
Well, I'm very realistic to know that the way it is, the way it's structured, it's going to have to take a magical season for anyone in our league to get an at-large bid, just because of, the way it's just so hard for the best teams in our league to schedule, power conference teams in the non-league, especially at home. We'll get a few, but they're always on the road, hardly ever neutral, and never in our gym. So the system and the way, teams are, evaluated is going to have to change for us to get a second bid. But I don't think Princeton's the only team in our league that could be competitive in this tournament this year. If you look at the numbers right now, our conference by Ken Pom is ranked as the 12th best conference in the country, ahead of the Atlantic 10, right behind, the Power 6 and the West Coast Conference and American Conference. So there's really good basketball. Princeton is certainly carrying the torch right now for our league, but it goes well beyond them in terms of, what teams in our league can do against the very best in the country.
You also played in a non-conference game against Michigan State. They beat you by, I think, 18. What was it like to go up against Tom Izzo? And obviously he's known for what he does in March. And it doesn't mean they have had all the best success lately, but they're in the Sweet 16 too.
Yeah, obviously that was a special opportunity for us. We're fortunate. One of our senior captains and all-league player, Paxton Wojcik. His father, Doug, is on the staff at Michigan State. Doug was so helpful in organizing that game and helping us have the opportunity. We also have a junior on our team who's from Detroit. So it served a lot of really, great purposes for us to go play Michigan State. We had a hard time scoring against them. We competed well physically, thought our defense, in rebounding stood up to, what it needed to, but we had a bad offensive game. So much of that had to do with Michigan State. But, for me as a young head coach who is trying to build a program, to coach against a Hall of Famer, not that he and I, had anything to do with the on-court. Like neither one of us was guarding each other or matching up against each other on the court, but it was a special opportunity on a lot of different levels, given the Wojciks and given that Tom Izzo's right down the sideline.
Ed Cooley.
I was going to ask about Ed Cooley at Georgetown and a fit there for him.
Yeah, Ed's as good as there is with people. Ed and I are great friends. Happy for him. He what he's done here. Not just building a really good basketball program, but like in this city, Providence College basketball. Anytime they played, it wasn't a game. It became an event because of Ed and the type of work he's done in our community, the type of work he's done in our state, what he's done for that program. I think, I don't want to speak for him, but the opportunity, to coach, at Georgetown, the brand that they have, John Thompson is one of his mentors and really it was his coaching idol when he got into the business. I think that hit home for him on a lot of levels, and he'll do great work down there. And I think that Georgetown program will be back in the NCAA tournament and, competing at the top of the sport in short order.
Mike, what is it like? Because, obviously we cover all of college athletics and we cover a lot of the Big 12 because of Baylor and all of that. But what is it like to be a part of the Ivy League in athletics? What it's obviously incredibly unique.
It is. It's a special conference. We obviously first and foremost we're unique because, our student athletes are not on full athletic scholarship, right? They receive need-based financial aid, but we're the one Division I conference in the country that doesn't have full athletic scholarships. With that said, everyone on my roster is turning down full scholarships to come in the Ivy League because of the life opportunities. You can compete at the highest level athletically. You're going to get a world-renowned education. You're going to join an alumni network that is as strong and as powerful as almost any out there. So we always say you can pursue excellence in every aspect of your experience here at Brown. This league is filled with incredibly special people, and I've been really fortunate to coach the young men I've coached and to come in contact with the people I have, given my affiliation with Brown.
Mike Martin, the head coach at Brown University on 365 Sports. It looks like the Big East, we brought up Ed Cooley. You have Pitino. You have all of this movement. Is it bringing back some memories of that conference of lore?
I'll tell you what, it really is. You look at, and obviously they got three teams in the Sweet 16. Danny Hurley at UConn, Sean Miller at Xavier, Greg McDermott at Creighton, and you think about the brand of Georgetown and Villanova, and obviously with Pitino now at St. John's, and the Garden's going to be rocking. Providence has done so much. Providence College to invest in their program with facilities and resources, and I have no doubt that they're going to have a great coach leading them next year. So, and I'm leaving out some other schools, but Big East basketball is what I grew up on here in this area. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from Springfield, Mass, and I went down to watch the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. I watched the Providence UConn game because of my relationship with Ed, and there's nothing like it. The Madison Square Garden Big East tournament. I'm biased, but I put it up there against any conference.
How big is that for St. John's to a team that, everybody kind of associates with big-time college basketball from a while ago, but now with Pitino and, of course, they play at the Garden, which is the mecca of basketball anyway. Is that them, doubling down and trying to reassert themselves in this national picture?
I think so. I think Rick Pitino is, he's proven it wherever he's been. He's one of the best college basketball coaches of all time. And, put him in New York City in Madison Square Garden, and he's going to have he's going to have that program, I think competing at the top of that conference. So I think this is them saying, hey, we're St. John's, and we're gonna win a lot of basketball games, and we're gonna be a perennial contender to win Big East championships. So I think it's a great move for them, and I can't wait to see it.
I've always had appreciation for Xavier. Obviously, you mentioned the others, but also Creighton with what they did. They dominated Baylor. We know how Baylor has been really, really elite the last 8 to 10 years, including a couple of years ago. But I think Coach McDermott, I think his team was better, and it wasn't just an off night. Now, if they played like in the best of 7, who knows? But we were all kind of expecting that Creighton might just be a little bit better because Baylor has struggled this year on the defensive end.
Well, Creighton, you mentioned it. I mean, they're so well-rounded. Coach McDermott does a great job. We played them last year in the Paradise Jam down in St. Thomas, and I was just so impressed with they're really hard to guard. But then the kid Kalkbrenner defensively is a game changer. It'll be interesting to see how Princeton fares against Creighton, because I do think Creighton is so well-rounded, and I think we'll give Princeton some issues this weekend. But when you talk about Baylor, and I do follow the Big 12 as well. Obviously when you have your own program, it's a little bit harder, but I'm good friends with Porter Moser at Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So I'm familiar with how dynamic that Baylor offense was this year. And for Creighton to do what they did, I think, again, shows how good they are.
Mike, thank you very much. We appreciate it. You're a great job with what you do, and hopefully maybe down the road have more from you, and appreciate the knowledge and experience too.
If Gallagher ever stops talking, maybe I'll have time to come back on. Thanks, guys.
Hey, we need to use that clip tomorrow when Coach Gallagher joins us. He will join us tomorrow, I think like at 3:30 tomorrow with us on 365 Sports. Appreciate that. That's awesome to have a college football. We've had college football head coaches from not just the Big 12, but also with Mike Martin, John Gallagher tomorrow. And I know that there are some schools interested in him. He told us that, about a week ago, and we'll have him on again tomorrow. Paxton, is Pitino just going to coach the rest of his life? Jason O. St. John's will be his last job. It'll be fun if he can get them turned around.
I'm interested, and to see how he does there. And, the relitigating Rick Pitino's past is pointless at this point. But, St. John's, I thought of them all the time because, again, you're a college that's not necessarily a gigantically big school. It's not a big school, but you're playing in the Garden. You're popular. That is essentially when a college basketball team is doing well in New York City, that's New York City's college basketball team. Mm-hmm. And so, because again, you play in the Garden.
Louis Carnesecca.
Yeah. And so you have all that there. Yeah. That can get going again. New York is one of the best, recruiting basketball in New York for St. John should be pretty easy. Rick Pitino should be able to walk out to, 10 high schools and get his 10 players. Not to mention guys from New York and other places that may want to come back and play in the city. I think it'd be pretty interesting to see where they are going forward.
I think when it comes to men's basketball, there's talent. Texas is loaded. We hear about football, but Texas is absolutely loaded when it comes to basketball too. But I think when it comes to men's basketball, like we hear about with Florida or like we hear about with Texas and, 3 or 4 other states, Georgia, California, Louisiana, Alabama, loaded, Ohio. Yeah, in men's basketball, you're going to find some basketball players. But Louis Carnesecca was the head coach for most of, when I was growing up, from 1965 to 92. Took him to the NCAA Final Four in 1985. 1985 was the year that I believe Villanova upset Georgetown. So now think about this. St. John's, Villanova, Georgetown in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. By the way, Steve Moser says living in New York City for college sounds horrible. And I think that just based on your perspective. If you're from the city, most of the time you love the city. That's my point, is you love the city. You grew up and you know it, you love it, and it's a big deal to you. Now, if you're not from New York and living there, it could be terrible. I don't know. I've always kind of wanted to live there for a little while, but I may have go up there and hate it. I don't know. It's different. It's a whole different way of life in New York City. But I mean, for your college kid, I mean, considering that every college in America has some sort of internship program up there, I don't think that in the world, maybe even, I don't think it's really that horrible for college kids. I mean, what's the biggest complaint about most college towns? There's nothing to do here when there's not a big event going on. Well, that's not something you can complain about in New York City.
No, there's always something to do. But they have again Madison Square Garden, Carnesecca Arena, St. John's with a phenomenal history in basketball, but it's been a little bit lean. And now you have Rick Pitino there. Thanks to Mike Martin for joining us on the show. I got to know, Craig would normally do Off the Radar, and I don't know if he'll be back in time. But I don't know if he'll be back in time for Off the Radar. Last night, the Japanese beat Mexico in the semifinal to play the United States. It was a walk-off double off the left center field wall. Ohtani opened up the inning with a double, and the Japanese team now will play United States tonight. There was a stat that, and I told you I've kind of gone all in. Now, I didn't sit there and wait for the first pitch last night, but I was watching it. Here's an amazing stat from Barstool Baseball. This is, of course, they take a lot of information from a lot of different people, but approximately 93.6% of all televisions in Japan last night were tuned into Mexico against Japan. 93.6%, which apparently is the largest audience in the history of ever to watch a baseball game. And now put that number, and it's Japanese and some of the players who were in the American League, the major leagues, against the United States. What would the percentage be tonight? 100?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Unless they're sleeping, whoever's making...
Look, think about this. If you're just a fan, if you're watching in Japan and you're an Ohtani fan,
yes,
Ohtani's going against his teammate in Mike Trout. That, to me, is interesting enough to watch this thing. It didn't matter, what the countries were, but that makes it that much better. Yeah, the World Baseball Classic's been fun. The crowds have been great. It didn't happen in 2020 because of COVID, so there's been some pent-up energy for this. The countries that are really into it are really into it. It was conceived to, and now baseball's back in the Olympics, but out of spite of this isn't a sport we need to have in the Olympics. Okay, maybe not every time because you don't want to build a baseball field in Great Britain, but come on now. This is a very popular international sport, which is why Major League Baseball in Japan, in the, what are they called? The Japanese League. Why am I forgetting?
The Japanese
League. Yeah. I guess the Japanese professional baseball is what they call it. But they need to maybe work a little bit better with, and they've changed the rule a little bit so you don't have to put up the crazy posting fee like you used to, but getting some of those stars to America a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and I on the chat room, I'm going back and forth. I experienced the love of baseball in Japan when I was in 8th grade through my junior year because my dad was stationed in Japan. And I've said this story, and Paul's correct me if I have, just stop me. But the first time we ever played a Japanese team, and I was at Chofu Middle School, Chofu High School on Kantomura, which was an old air base that was more of a community base, and then went to Yokota, the huge Air Force base. But the first time that we were really good. This is my 8th grade, so this is a summer league. We were really good. And then we played a Japanese team that was from off the base and got destroyed 11-1. I'll never forget it. Almost every run they scored was on bunts and fundamentals. The next time we played them, we beat them because it made us understand the fundamentals. Not that we couldn't play. Yeah. We were pretty good.
Playing 9 Ichiros?
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we would play against some teams in what would be our non-district or non-conference games when I was in high school there. And I'm telling you, it was intense. It was good. It was incredible. The players, the opponents, the managers, the coaches were fantastic. And so I hope this makes sense. And I don't think anyone who's ever been overseas before, when did the internet start? 90? When did it really? 90s, right? Cell phones, 90s. Unless you were before then and you lived in Germany or you lived in Japan, if you were stationed as a military kid or just government worker, when we moved to Japan, there was no satellite dish. There was no dish network. There was no DirecTV. There was no cable. So what we had to do is we had to find a way to get our sports itch, because we had the Far East Network. One game you could hear, like one game on the radio at 3 o'clock in the morning, American, because it was in Japan. And
probably some like closed circuit opportunities for like special things, right?
Like
that's kind of what went on.
An alley or a Fraser
bases.
fight.
Yeah.
You'd go to like a military, like the gym or whatever, or a hangar. But so it was great for me and my brothers, my three brothers. It really helped us understand culture. So what we did every night, we turn on the television, and guess what? Who I watched? The Hanshin Tigers, the Yomiuri Giants, when Sadahara and I mean, we got to know the Carp and whoever else the teams, the names of back then. That was our league, even though we got the Far East, the Stars and Stripes newspaper who keep up with box scores, but that's became my league for 4 years to follow because you had no other choice with no internet.
He still has it, or it's somewhere, but my uncle was showing me some stuff they had from Japan. And so this is when we went to a Giants game in Japan, and on the cover of the program, I'm like, oh, it's Sadahara O. And he's like, how did you know about that? I'm like, well, he's the Babe Ruth of Japan. Like, everybody knows him.
Yep.
I mean, maybe he's the Ted Williams of Japan because he managed. I don't know. But he is that guy in Japan. And they had him. He's like, yeah, well, he's like, I didn't even really remember. Like, I remember going to the game, and I remember, him kind of being a big deal. I'm like, yeah, he's the big deal. I mean, he is Japan's Babe Ruth. Everybody knows about Sadahara O, and so I've always been kind of fascinated by it. I remember, it's very funny. I mentioned Ichiro a second ago. I was a freshman in college. I think his rookie year in the majors. He'd already been in Japan for a decade and setting records over there. But I had a friend who was like, "Oh, he just slaps singles and bunts, and he's not that good." And I'm all about Barry Bonds, whatever. We had another friend whose dad was a baseball coach, and goes, "You know what I would give?"
For someone like that, yeah.
For one, if I had two guys like that, he goes, if I had two guys, just two Ichiros on a team, I would never lose a game. He goes, because the way he played, and that was, and it wasn't like if you go and watch it, like you start watching, they would show Japanese league games occasionally. You start watching, like, well, Ichiro was just the best at their style of baseball. Like, he was just so good at it because he was so fast, and his arm was ridiculous.
And now you have what Ohtani brings to the table, and in between there have been pitchers and so much more. But it's the Nippon Professional League is what they call it. That's the sponsor of the Japanese league. But these are teams that are still a part of it that I remember. The Chunichi Dragons. The Hanshin Tigers had the Tigers type logo. The Hiroshima Toyo Carp. The Tokyo Yakult Swallows. Yokohama Dine Bay Stars, and the Yomiuri Giants were the New York Yankees of Japanese professional baseball. And there were others, of course, Hokkaido. A lot of teams, a couple of the teams' names have changed, but I always loved the Nippon Ham Fighters in Hokkaido. And they had kind of a Toronto, just off the top of my head, have not even looked at the name or the color, but I believe they had kind of almost like a Toronto Blue Jays color scheme.
They do.
So loved it. And so that gave me my itch of watching those games at night. And then, of course, you could follow sumo wrestling, which became such a big deal, too.
For the longest time, I didn't know what a ham fighter was. Like, I thought, like, what's a ham for? Like, why would you fight ham? Like, what am I missing in Japan? No, Nippon Ham is their sponsor.
Yes.
And they're the fighters.
Yes.
Is their mascot. But I don't know. That might be, Trevor Bauer is pitching in Japan this year.
He is. Yep. He absolutely is. And the Hanshin Tigers, I believe when I was there, the logo or on the cap, very similar to what the Detroit Tigers with that incredible logo that they have. There's one of the old school logos in baseball. I know that went a long way, but I loved my 4 years in Japan because it gave me a chance to look at something different. I always wished that back in the day, baseball then, you didn't have Japanese players headed to play in the major leagues like you see that now a lot with players from overseas, Korea and elsewhere. But it would have been interesting if Sadahara O could have come over and just seen how well or not he would have done, because we get to see that now with the players. And Ichiro turned out to be a Hall of Fame type player. And obviously what we see with Ohtani, a once-in-a-lifetime playing pitching, and also he is a fielder. 4:33 is the time, and this is 365 Sports. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor with all of the great brands and cigars. The other day, playing a round of golf, I have a little case. It's a Pelican case. It holds like 6 to 8 cigars, and I take it with me when I go play a round of golf. I don't need that many of them, but I put it in there when I'm going to go play on the weekend. And I was smoking the Churchill Length Oliva. I have not brought that up very often, but I had a box of Oliva cigars. My brother, Robert, in Florida, sent me EP Carrillo, which is a cigar that he likes to smoke whenever he can. And so I had those in my Pelican case. And when I play golf, it's just for some reason something I like to be able to smoke a cigar, hitting the ball off the number 1 tee or whatever, and it's enjoyable. So if you like cigars, whether it's sitting around on the deck having a drink, sitting around the pool where you live, on vacation, on the golf course, at a barbecue, and you're like, you don't smoke around. Yeah, you do. If you want a cigar, they have them. The elite brands of cigars. Also, the Vita Dreams, a gummy that helps you go to bed, a little CBD product that helps you have a much more restful and longer night's sleep. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center with Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne just off Valley Mills in the Town West Shopping Center in Waco.
Cars priced right both day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you. Red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard Car in Waco, Texas.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics.
Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Garrett, have you noticed there's a Paul recently has been in this, I don't have his numbers slump.
Yeah, sometimes you say we have people that we've never had on the show before. Like, you've talked to them. And then, we've had this guy before, or I wasn't maybe here that day.
All right, I'm gonna find this text. I'm gonna find you this text.
I'm gonna have to side with Paul on this one, Smokey, because there was no graphic. I had to make a graphic for Jim, so I don't know.
All right, so both of you are wrong because if you don't have it, let me know. I don't ever throw things against the wall. We have a guest lineup. It's usually up by 1:30, if not the night before. Yeah, he wrote an article for Forbes on Amazon and also Apple TV Plus. I sent Paul the number. He's going to come on. I'm going to see if you just can make up his number. You can delete text now. That's what
you've always been able to delete text. Here's the thing. I've not been in the habit of deleting text since I've worked with you for the last decade, because sometimes I need evidence for when we go to court on this, and I've got to get my star witness over here.
Star witness?
Yeah.
I know. Garrett can turn on me very, very, very quickly.
So
yeah, you can.
I just deal in the facts.
All right. Someone asked about Mac Rhodes. He's going to be on tomorrow at 5.
Yeah.
Mac will be with us tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Okay, so there was a cat fight last night. We've already brought up the Baylor losing to UConn. Paul was so all excited about this. Garrett, do you have the picture? Is there a picture or is it video?
It's just this right here.
All right. So Louisville went into Austin last night and beat the hell out of Texas and Vic Schaefer. So Haley Van Lith is a Louisville heck of a player, scored like 21 points. So they're in a handshake line. Now, you can see they're not like saying, hey, you're cute. Texas is it Sonia Morris? Mm-hmm. She used to be at DePaul, and Louisville beat them last year by 50 or something like that. But something was said during the game. When Van Lith was asked about this, she pretty much she kind of just said, hey, the heat of the moment, whatever else. There's a quote at the bottom. But Morris, they're not hugging here. They had a little cat fight, Garrett, and Morris was upset about perhaps something that she thinks that Van Lith said. Louisville's always had a little edge to when they play. If you ask Baylor back in 2013 with Brittany Griner,
their coach is
Jeff Waltz is a hell of a coach.
He's he's one of the few people I've seen out animate Kim Mulkey on the sideline. Like in that game that they won, I mean, he was jumping up on the scorer's table and
sitting on it.
Doing all those things.
But he has his team, man. They haven't been. They're in the Sweet 16 like for the 6th consecutive year. That doesn't even include the team that made the run when they shocked the world and beat Brittany Griner in that team that was coming off 40-0. So they had a little to do. Also, here's a stat, one more stat on women's basketball, and I guess probably until the championship Final Four. But last night, Stanford, was it last night? No.
Night before last, Ole Miss at Stanford.
Ole Miss beat Stanford. Yeah, that's right. Ole Miss beat Stanford. All right, Stanford's the number 1 seed. We have always discussed this about women's basketball. You do not have number 1 seeds rarely ever lose. Now, again, let's go back to the Louisville of 2013. They beat Baylor with Brittany Griner, and that was, Paul, wasn't that that was in the Sweet 16 round, I believe, when they lost to Louisville, and it was a shocking loss. You don't see that in women's basketball. You just don't. It just doesn't happen. Well, so last night, Duke lost, and then last night Stanford, I believe it was Stanford lost. No, Indiana's the number 1 seed. So here's the tweet from Kelly Gramlich. Paul, one of the reasons you don't like women's basketball, you don't like the style. Okay, the other part of it is you talk about chalk when it comes to a bracket. Number 1 seeds are going to always be in the Elite 8. Number 2, you rarely have anybody. This is happening more and more.
And that's great.
No,
that'll get me into it, because the reason I didn't.
Let's talk about the first time ever that 2 number 1 seeds have lost before the Sweet 16. That you have no idea, even if you don't watch women's basketball, that just never happens. And that's obviously the truth.
No, it doesn't. And look, that's because of years of, misogyny and different things that ran through athletics and the educational system, and the fact that, when people first started letting women play basketball recreationally, they're like, well, we don't want to wear them out for their cooking and cleaning, so we're going to let them do the half court, which is the dumbest thing ever.
6 on 6.
Yeah, 6 on 6 in the half court. Like, come on. So eventually, when they wised up and made the game as the game is for everybody, it's going to gradually get better, but you've got to break off years of terrible practices and different things that happened. So, and it's starting to change. It's starting to change. And that grow, we've seen more upsets here lately, now, especially at the top, which is really big, because the reason that the men's tournament is so good is you have no idea how it's going to go.
Which is
you
obviously.
have no idea how it's going to go.
Yep.
The reason that the women's tournament struggles is that for the most part, over the whole of the tournament, almost exactly how it's going to go.
Yep.
And, look, if a 2 beats a 1, that's not really that big of a deal, right? That's different. But when a 9 beats a 1, that's a huge deal. So those are the things that were not happening in women's basketball hardly at all. And if they did happen, it was because somebody tore their ACL or something,
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you had full strength, they had full strength, you had upsets. Now, the part is also probably transfer portal, things like that happening affect all sports. So, yeah, it's great for women's basketball that you're having these upsets.
There used to be 6 teams, maybe 6 or 8, that you could say would win a national championship for decades. And again, back in the day, it might have been Old Dominion and others, and now it's changed. But now you have these number 1 seeds getting beat before. They didn't even make the Sweet 16. That's unheard of. Louisville beating Texas was a 5 beating a 4. UConn beating Baylor was not was expected. UConn, a number 2 seed. Baylor, I think, what were they, Garrett, a number 7 seed?
Yeah, they were.
Is that right? A competitive game. But for not to have 2 number 1s get into the Sweet 16 in women's basketball has never been seen before. We'll come back. Craig Smoak is back from Baylor football practice. We'll check in on that and a few other notes and nuggets. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. My dentist, Dr. Steve Childress, proud to say that because I have learned so much from him and have been going to him now for, I guess it's been 3 or 4 years. And it used to be whenever I needed to go to a dentist appointment, I would start to it would just bother me. It would just get me because I knew that I was not always taking care, or at least not putting enough time into my dental work and dental hygiene. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's a process. It's no different than anything else you may do. It's not just something you can forget about, and then 3 months later you go see a dentist and everything's just fine and dandy. And so he's helped me get my dental work into a really good spot. And more to go, more to come, and I'll do that. But it used to be go to the dentist, there's going to be a cavity, because, well, there should have been, maybe 2. A tooth needed to be maybe pulled down the road, or a root canal. I don't feel that way now. When I go in, I feel confident because Dr. Steve Childress and his staff have been amazing in helping me understand the value of not just brushing your teeth, but taking care of your teeth. Stonewood Dental, elite at what they do in Robinson, Texas.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
All right, here we go. Craig Smoak back with us at 5 o'clock. Jim Williams, just after 5. Jim Williams, Forbes columnist, Zanger columnist, will join us. He used to work at what is it, Diamond Sports, is that right, that just went under or is going under? And it was Bally's. And before that, it was
Diamond Sports is the company the parent company that owns, the subsidiary of Sinclair, that is the parent company that owns Bally Sports.
Okay, the name of this channel is what?
Bally Sports.
All right. Bally Sports used to be Fox Sports Southwest.
Yes.
And then there was maybe a name in between that. But it all, I believe, began when it was called HSE, the Home Sports Entertainment. Jim Williams, who's to join us a little bit after 5 o'clock, used to work back in the day. He and I used to know each other back in the day. He wrote the article today in the Forbes magazine on that. Now, Alabama, we know what's happened, unfortunately, with the story that's really dominated the last month because of the death on campus or around campus. But Mike Rodak covers Alabama. Tony Mitchell has been suspended from the team until Alabama gathers more information about his situation. And then Saban's quote made people go in 9 different directions. Go ahead. Everybody's got an opportunity to make choices and decisions. There is no such thing as being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think a lot of people have read into this a little bit. I know. Here's what I think it means. I don't think he liked that excuse from Nate Oates at all. And I don't think it brought a bad light to Alabama, which is bad for every coach and every program that, especially when you're trying to make yourself look as good as you can every time. But, and look, Saban's had guys that have run afoul. He's never had a murder. So it's a little bit different when it comes to that. But this dude was going 141, especially when Henry Ruggs, right? That happened too. That was one of his guys in the NFL. So those are things that probably hit close to home. Now, what I don't believe is the narrative that Nick Saban at all is ruffled by the fact that the basketball team is doing good.
No. I think that the narrative was that Nick Saban was taking a direct shot at Alabama men's basketball coach Nate Oates, who made that Miller was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
No, I think he said that for a reason. Nick Saban's very calculated, but I think he said it because it was embarrassing for Alabama. I don't think he said it because there's a lot of people like, oh, he's probably mad because basketball's doing well. He does not give two hunky craps that basketball is doing great. It's great for him when basketball does well. He goes to basketball games. He uses it as a recruiting tool. He's not going, he wants everything to be good. He's not that dude. He's not John Calipari. So I don't think he cares about that. I think that's putting something on him that's not true. I do think he cares about when something happens that makes the university look silly, which Nate Oates' comments were at the beginning of this whole thing.
Well, there were a lot of people that thought Saban was taking a direct shot at Nate Oates. One of the On3 reporters, Clint Lamb, who covers Alabama, saying that no, he was not in any way taking any kind of personal shot at Nate Oates, although the quote was almost identical to what Oates said soon after the story broke earlier, I guess back what was in February, or I guess it was in February, early March.
Well, I guess they did a great job of nobody talking about Tony Mitchell, huh? I mean, everybody's sitting here arguing over whether he was taking shots at Nate Oates or not. I think that the line being similar, I mean, that seems like it's pretty long odds that was just happened to be what he had to say in that moment. I think that was calculated somewhat because the situation was embarrassing for Alabama, and nothing that brought them down, nothing that's going to stop them from winning a national title or anything. But that was a bad look. It still is. We just don't talk about it now because basically they're playing basketball again. So don't worry about it right now. They've got a championship to win, and there's also not been too much new news on that front, but it is weird. I think that if it was lesser programs, there would be, even more of a focus on it. I absolutely believe that. I do think that Alabama has gotten their fair share of coverage, but I do wonder to what extent they've been able to dodge some of it that others might not have been able to. But still, the laws are the laws, and because of that, things have unfolded the way that they have, and I'm not going to sit there and say, he should be kicked off the team or Nate Oates should be fired. I have not called for any of that. I do think it's a lot bigger, though, than maybe it's been portrayed. I mean, you brought a gun to a murder. You did. Bottom line.
Right.
You brought a gun to a murder, and that gun was used to kill somebody. And that's my bad. Wrong place, wrong time. Wrong place, wrong time happens when you're visiting a volcano and the volcano erupts. When you're bringing a gun to a scene and somebody gets killed, that is not exactly wrong place, wrong time necessarily. But, that's I don't want to squabble too much over that. I think that he was just making a point of, sending a message, but absolutely not going after Nate Oates or anything like that. And I think anybody who said that was probably joking. I think if you looked at who tweeted that, unless they're just a hardcore hater or something, I think, saying that was he was going after him, I didn't take it that way. I just took it as I'm paying attention, and I think I need to say something, and it's a little bit embarrassing, but nothing more than that.
All right, before we take a break, come back with Jim Williams. You were at practice. You mentioned Sawyer Robertson wearing jersey 13. People like to just soak all of that kind of thing in. I know you didn't get to see much. There's all sorts of tremendous amount of construction. It's a mess because of growth. Anything in particular at all from when you were there watching practice today?
No, not really. I mean, it was dreary, and we were off to one side of the field to where we got to see a couple of drills up close, but, didn't get a real full scope of the action. And plus, it was just, individual drills and things like that. I mean, it was good to see Matt Pallage out there, a new defensive coordinator returning after a year away at Oregon, back and now in a more prominent position on the staff. He was out there and riling up the troops and had a lot of energy and, looked like he was, he was in the zone, as they all were. I think just glad to be back out there. But, yeah, to see him out there was pretty cool to catch, a couple of the new coaches that are on staff, like a Christian Robinson, getting to see a little bit of him at work was good to see. But, again, it's day one and it's individual drills, so it's not like there's, the heat of competition or anything crazy. Grayson made note of Kyan Roberts' day, as he had reported earlier this spring. Kyan Roberts' day, one of the, better recruits that I think they landed in the last couple years, but a guy who just seemed like he was way too big to be an effective every week in and week out type of running back. Like Alabama, he could have been probably, because they just roll those guys off the line, but he's moved to Jack, and that was, cool to see him in defensive drills. And, just, make note of a couple guys in jerseys that are, like Devin Lemire is injured right now. He's in the injury jersey. He's just kind of watching practice to the side after dealing with a shoulder injury this offseason. So just kind of picking up on, all right, who's in what jersey, what do guys look like, and things like that. It was cool to see, Sawyer Robertson out there side by side with Blake Shapen, just going through some throws in front of Sean Bell. But again, it's day one, so not a lot to take away other than just some minor, position changes and just seeing guys in person for the first time, or for the first time in a long time. But it was good to be back. There is an S-load of construction going on right now over on that campus. They're moving the indoor from 80 to 100 yards. They're also adding a new lobby that's going to be a part of the football center as well. So the entire area over there is pretty, picked clean as far as asphalt that's still standing from 2 years ago. Everything's dug up. Everything's in piles of dirt and brick. And it's all going to look really good when it gets finished. But right now it's a bit messy over there. So parking's at a premium, but it's good to be back out there.
Well, it's a sign of growth, and it's part of that arms race that college athletics is having. Mack Rhodes will be with us tomorrow at 5 o'clock, not today. And we could ask him about a lot of that, because I'm sure when he looks out at that and says, man, just like when they started digging up dirt at the pavilion, which now you see the shell of the arena or pavilion, or when McClain Stadium was going through their construction 10 years ago. When we come back, we will hear from Jim Williams, a columnist. He has been through some of these media discussions and contracts and more. Wrote a column in Forbes today about Amazon and Apple Plus TV and the Pac-12. His thoughts next on 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marcos.com online, where you can get the Magnifico pizzas. And it used to be the pepperoni Magnifico. Now you have the sausage Magnifico and the pepperoni, but also the ultimate Magnifico. And really what Magnifico means in this case for Marcos is just a bunch of what you want on top of your pie, on top of your pizza. Whether it's thick crust or thin crust or whatever you want it, they will do it. Magnifico pizzas online, $9.99 is where they start. Also, you can use the code word NEWMAG online, and you can order it right now, Marcos.com. Unlimited medium one-topping pizzas for $7.99 each. The pictures are of sausage or pepperoni, or even one with no meat, and it's just got some bell peppers on the top with cheese as well. $3 off large specialty pizzas. Use the code SPECIAL3. All of these available online, or you could pick up the phone and call your local Marco's Pizza. 5 locations. There was a time there were none, and now there are 5 in Robinson, Belmead, Hewitt, Woodway, and also in China Spring. Marco's Pizza, Bob Mock, the owner. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist's office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We have tried to bring you numerous angles when it comes to sports economy. Yesterday, or Monday, Andy Zimbalist joined us. We've had Bob Williams. We've had Patrick Crakes. We've had as many as we could possibly get, eyeballs and ears and experience of those who understand the media business and media sports business. And somebody else who does is a name for me from the past of the days of home sports entertainment. Jim Williams, who writes for Zanger, writes for Forbes, wrote an article today. Will Amazon or Apple TV Plus offer the Pac-12 deal they can't say no to? And Jim joins with Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and David Smoak on 365 Sports. Jim, have you ever seen the climate in sports economy the way it is right now?
No, honestly. It's really, to use the word muddled would not actually be fair to the word muddled. It's really amazing. There's an old saying, guys, here in Washington, that those who know aren't talking and those who talking don't know. And I really kind of think that's where we are in this whole situation right now.
Where do you see the Pac-12 coming out on this? If you have to make your bold prediction right now, what's the deal?
Oh, man. I think they're gonna have to try to thread the needle with an Apple Plus TV deal where they may have to barter a linear contract, either with Fox or somewhere else. If we are to believe, and look, John Orend and I work together at Sports Business Journal. I know John, and if he says that ESPN's not there anymore, or Andy Marchand says it's not there anymore, or that they've walked away, then the logical thing is that would be it. So I don't know. I mean, that would be the way I would think. I don't know how, given how the president at Arizona and Arizona State have spoken, I don't know that they can get there from here.
Jim, how do you view, forget, I guess the Pac-12 is a part of this because it's kind of part of the reason we're talking about, but how do you view the balance of streaming with live sports and how that's going to work moving forward? The thought is that streaming is the direction that we're all going. We know there's been massive investments in all of those things from various streamers and companies, and that continues on. But how much of a balance between the cable that we've always known and the streaming side of things with all the cord cutters and the added bonus of having that on top of cable for a lot of people? Where are we headed with live sports, do you think?
Craig, I think that it really kind of is funny because it depends, right? If you look at the numbers, right now, soccer fans of soccer have, they'll watch Paramount Plus, they'll watch and stream it on Paramount Plus, they'll stream it on Peacock, they'll stream it on ESPN Plus, they'll stream it now on Apple. So in many ways, it kind of depends on where you watch your sports, right? I think that we're going to see a direct-to-consumer product here in the next 3 to 5 years, because if you look at what happened to Bally's, right? Paul, you talked about this the other day. The Bally situation in regional cable is where I lived many years. It's the league wants those local rights back, and you may see deals where the Rockets and the Astros go together. You may see deals where the Angels and the Kings and different teams start getting together. I also believe, because of the way the recession is in sports at this point in time, that we're going to see a lot more consolidation. We're going to see a lot more of networks working together because the rights fees are going to be, one group is not going to be able to cover the amount of money that some of these routes are going to take. So I do believe, to try to answer the streaming question, I think that we're 2 or 3 years away from where that is a comfortable consumable. Okay. For right now, for some people, it's very comfortable. For others, it's not. But you need, the comfortable consumable. When Bob Iger says that, basically 3 years from now, ESPN is going to be ESPN Plus, that tells you where they're shooting for.
Jim, there are a lot of strange, things going on if you think about how media used to be and is now. And I kind of want to circle back to Bally Sports on this one, because they are the ultimate modern cautionary tale, aren't they? Because
100%.
Their parent company, Sinclair, tried to get enormous. The government would not let them, which is weird considering the government lately usually lets people do that. Right. And then they said, okay, if you're not going to let us do it in news, we'll do it in sports. But Disney sold off those properties and Fox did for a reason. And now we're seeing that, aren't we?
Yeah, well, actually, Disney wasn't allowed to keep them because of ESPN.
Yeah.
So they sold them. Where things really kind of went weird, and look, God knows I love ESPN. They paid me for many years. So rights fees got to a point where it was ridiculous. They were paying way over what market value was, right? Then things got really weird when the Dodgers got that $7 billion deal. And that started a chain reaction where Fox went down and gave the Angels $3 billion. Then they went down the coast to the Padres, got $3 billion. Then, if you remember the Astros, right? At that point, Fox was terrified that the Longhorn Network was going to get either the Astros or the Rangers, so they overpaid there. So we had this ridiculous kind of cautionary tale to your point, to the Valley's point, where regional sports networks are paying these outrageous sums, and you're wondering, okay, wait a minute, how are you going to get this money back? You're talking about 3 or 4 million people paying. All right, they're paying it $4 now. You're going to up it to $4 or $5, so the cable bill is going to go up to pay for this, and at a time when people were beginning at that point just to start to cut the cable. So we had that inflection point where reality met this situation, and Bally's suddenly, I don't know how they didn't figure this out before they bought it, but suddenly realized there's no way we can pay for this.
Jim Williams, Forbes, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Forbes columnist Jim Williams with us wrote the story. Will Amazon or Apple TV Plus offer the Pac-12 deal they can't say no to? What if, and you mentioned Orand, and we've heard that Fox was not involved. At least that appears to be it. That doesn't mean they cannot get interested or get involved. If, in fact, ESPN is out of the deal, Jim, what would you do? I mean, how is that? It's not deadly, but then what?
All right, if I were George Kliavkoff, and let's say this is how it has to work. If ESPN is out, right? George Kliavkoff knows that he needs to have some linear television. I don't know if it's 50%. That's what I think the president of Arizona said. The President Stone, I believe his name is. Anyway, so the way that you could do that is if you get Amazon and Apple together, and the numbers around 28 to 31, right? So you're relatively even on the money. You could make a deal with Eric Shanks at Fox, and just like the deal that Apple TV made with the MLS, where you say, okay, look, we need you to carry these games. We'll produce them. We'll pay for the production and produce them. We'll air them on Fox. Eric took 15 games, and he's got part of that's going to be on FS1, part of it's going to be on Fox. That would be a way to do it, and you could barter that deal so Eric has some spots and then like a 60-40 split. So basically what you're doing is you're giving your linear rights away, but you're getting a network to carry your games. But you're getting the money from the stream. And you're still going to stream more than you're going to do linear, but you're going to do enough linear to make your ADs happy. It's not going to be over 50%.
Jim, that brings you to the exposure issue. Even if it's not more than 50%, wouldn't the number have to go full streaming or almost more than that, have to really dwarf the Big 12 if I'm an AD or a president to make me go, let's do that right now in 2023? Probably.
I mean, Paul, in all honesty, in the story I wrote that, that in a perfect world, George Kliavkoff would have, CBS, NBC, and all the people that the Big Ten have sitting at the same table. If all you have at the table is ESPN and two streamers, you basically have three streaming services at the table. Because how much, where exactly is ESPN going to put that content? They've got SEC, which now they've got to put, really push that. They still have that contract with the ACC. They just signed a contract with the Big 12. They've got they got the NHL, the NBA, because they want to keep the NBA. And certainly they just signed a deal with the NHL. And they got Major League Baseball. Where, I know they got a lot of networks, but where on the pecking order does the Pac-12 land in that?
Jim, how do you view I know that the Disney itself is laying off thousands of people, but how do you view that from the ESPN perspective? What does that tell you as somebody who's been in the business? Does that raise alarm bells, or how do you view that?
It would for me. I mean, whatever the number is that ESPN threw out there, and I don't know what that number is. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's 25, right? It's not going to get bigger. So, whatever ESPN offered them last is probably that's their best and final offer. I can't imagine that they're now. That being said, if ESPN thinks that the Pac-12 is going to do a deal, and they do a deal, let's just say for the sake of argument, they do a deal and it ends up like we just said. Let's say Fox walks in and takes that. What that does do is that shuts them out if none of the teams, go to the Big 12. That shuts them out of the West Coast. They got no West Coast because the Pac will have those games, and then UCLA and USC's in the Big 10. So they're out. They're totally shut off from the coast. So in a way, it's kind of a gamble that way.
Mm-hmm. So, now, as far as if in fact you were one of the, and I'm not asking you to speak for Robbins in Arizona or anyone else anywhere. We know that there are schools, and maybe every single one of them, depending on who you think or believe in, but that none of them, I think all of them want to keep this thing together. But if you were one of the schools that was at least your eye has been wandering, how long do you think they have until they need to see that number before it's more than just, wandering? Before there's, okay, wait a minute, this is getting to be too late in the time period. Is there a date?
Probably, I'm going to say 30 to 60 days if, and there's the qualifier here, if I've been spoken to by, I don't know, somebody like a Tim Cook or someone who's engaged from the network side, okay? It says we're going to get to a deal. George Kliavkoff is not going to convince me that that's going to happen. I need to hear somebody, who's going to potentially my partner who's going to sign a check that says we can get to X. It really boils down to, is it money or is it exposure?
Jim, your thoughts on the way that the Big 12 has set itself up. What do you like, maybe not like, as far as the quick to the table, let's renew this years ahead of time. Let's get on, make sure the big brands, ESPN and Fox, and as much linear as we can get. And, of course, they'll be on ESPN Plus, as a lot of people have pointed out, as well. There will be plenty of games over there. But what did you think of just that tactic from a business standpoint?
Well, there's two things that was done by the Big 12 that was very bright, okay? First off, we have to credit Bowlesby for going out and expanding. And I don't think it gets enough credit for the money shot was BYU. And the reason the money shot was BYU is back in remember when the 2010, shift came and we started seeing people move. And then again in 2015. Both times I had been involved in some of that. And both times ESPN was telling me, how much BYU was worth. And, BYU is worth, guys, BYU is probably the difference between 27 and 31 in that contract. So BYU alone was probably, they kicked it to the 31, 32 number from, say, 27, 28. So that was good on Bowlesby. Then it was good on Brett, because, see, Brett's deal, when he went in, he didn't have to that was an extension. That wasn't, he didn't have to start from scratch. So the extension was easier to negotiate because when they went in, remember, they jumped ahead. So he couldn't have gone anywhere else other than to Fox and to ESPN to get that deal done. So he nailed down an extension. So both guys should be given credit for doing the right thing. Now, what happened with the Pac, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know whether it's hubris or what the hell went on over there. But they didn't jump on the expansion time. They kind of let that go by when USC and UCLA left. Then they didn't jump on the situation with the deal with Fox and ESPN. And if it's reported, somebody, I don't know who reported it, said it was 31, the same deal. I don't know that to be true, but I don't know what they wanted either. So they're where they are, and there's Amazon, there's Apple Plus, and then there's ESPN. And I wrote the story basically saying, look, you've got the presidents out there who are, touting that we've got, tremendous relationships with Apple, with Amazon. We are the birth, we birthed these networks. Now they're turning around and you have to say, okay, we're not going to use Apple Plus, even though our people, in brochures are saying that, we are the people who created these things. So you're in a really kind of a bizarre position there too. So it's not. I wouldn't want to hold the hand that George Kliavkoff has, because, as I said before, regardless of how you look at it, you've got Amazon, you've got Apple TV Plus, you've got ESPN. For all intents and purposes, no matter how good somebody may make this sound, ESPN can only handle so much Pac-12 content before they got to move it to ESPN Plus. So I don't see a way out of this where they end up with 50, percent or more going linear. I just can't see. I don't know how it works. I just don't see how that makes it.
Jim, is your mark getting too much credit because of that extension, which obviously gave the conference stability, plus with the 4 incoming teams, and it gave them more time? And then, of course, he's coming up with a lot of different revenue-type ways, whether it's the pro day that's going to be on the NFL Network or something they do in basketball. But did he undercut the Pac-12? Not in a mean-spirited, but in a business way. Did he undercut the Pac-12 when they signed the extension and realizing there may not be any or much inventory left for us if it's not us first?
I don't think so. I think he did I think he thought, well, let me get in here and see what I can do. I think what he did was, I don't know that he knew how much he was going to get, okay? But what he did do is he set a marker, okay? And the marker ended up being, I think, what was it, 31.7, I think. So, just a tad shy of 32. So when he gets 31.7, that's the marker. So Kliavkoff knows the number. He's got to get 31.7, or he's got to get within, a few $1 million of that. The other thing, and again, it's good business. I'm not, your mark did. Was it a genius move? I don't know that it was a genius move, but it was a good move. Because it didn't. I don't think he undercut. I don't think he just wanted to put the number up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kliavkoff could beat it, then Kliavkoff gets what he wants. But again, remember that there's a different philosophy between these two conferences, number one. And number two, the commissioner works for the president, not for the athletic directors. So I don't know how much, leeway the presidents gave Kliavkoff in the amount of money that was offered to them. In many ways, you have to look at the presidents as much as you do Kliavkoff and say it's almost as much their fault as it is his that they're in this bit of a pickle.
Jim, just in terms of college athletics overall, I mean, I know you've heard the conversations about the super leagues, and obviously a lot of the moves made by the SEC and the Big Ten have put us in this position where we're talking about what we're talking about right now. Yeah. But it also leaves, now the ACC, some members starting to rattle the cage a little bit, even though they're under a long-term deal. I've heard people who believe that there's more consolidation to come. That's kind of the buzzy word. Others feel like there's always going to be a place at the table, whether that's the same table or not. But, no programs are going to just vanish. No leagues will vanish. But what is your opinion, or what is your informed thoughts on consolidation in the near future, and what that means, what that is, or what that could look like? Do you believe that storyline or that narrative when it comes to college athletics and football in particular?
I talked to Mike Oresco, the AAC commissioner. And I was wondering why, Mike didn't get with the Mountain West and create basically a super league of non-Power 5 teams, because they could have had a league, and they could still have a league where you're not just in all 4 time zones. You had Hawaii, you're in 5 time zones. I do believe for the I just don't see that the Power 5 can last, because there's never been a gap this distance between the haves and the have-nots. But I think we're going to see in the next TV contract, which comes up in 27, 28, just where this is going. And I think that if the pack can just stay together for, maybe the biggest argument Kliavkoff could say is, if we just stay together for one more TV contract, maybe, just maybe, we can, work on that deal that they had started with the ACC. I don't know. That was a heavy lift for a partnership, because you can't really merge. There has to be some sort of, they'd have to restructure that whole thing, and that just is way too much. So maybe a partnership they could do. But right now there's a lot of people who are in athletics in the conferences that do not begin with SEC and Big Ten, who are looking at the bottom line, and that bottom line is it's just not adding up. And I talked to a guy in West Virginia the other day who's saying, we're paying $2.5 million more than anybody else in the conference just in travel. So, and by the way, I mean, he was really complimentary of Brett Yermont, but at the end of the day, money's got to come from somewhere.
Last thing, Jim, and we appreciate your time. Jim Williams, again, columnist for Forbes, Zanger, also former a part of, again, media deals as an executive, and also now also a part of a consulting work as well. Does the number 31.7 is that like enormous? Not I say word pressure. Obviously, when you're a commissioner, you expect things like that. But is that, you hear about within 2 or 3 million? What would you say is the number it cannot be below?
25.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of seems fair.
I mean, I could see where, because you got to really, moving from a conference to another conference is a really expensive venture. So I'm going to say 25.
Okay.
That's about $6 million, and some may do for less. I don't know. I mean, it's the economics is, everybody's got a different checkbook, but I would say 25. If it's below 25, I don't think they have a chance. But at the end of the day, guys, and I'll just wrap it up here because I know you're on time, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you. To me, it really boils down to, can you live with streaming or can't you live with streaming?
Right.
That's all you got to deal with right now.
Yeah, and that also could affect the number you get if it's all streaming, or the number you get if it's,
Correct.
like you said, 50% or so. Jim, good stuff. We'll hope to have you on again. We'll see how things go the next few weeks. If anything at all, try to bring you back on. Thanks for helping us get set up with Andy Zimbalist yesterday. We appreciate your time and appreciate your articles. Thank you.
Okay, take care, guys.
Jim Williams, a consultant, Forbes, Zanger, columnist, and giving us just another perspective, another set of eyes, another set of ears, another different career, a part of this, but his own experience and some of his own knowledge. We appreciate his time. When we come back, Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Craig's back to practice, and this is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, brand new location, new facility, more than twice the size of the one they had. That, my goodness, to me, it's still amazing, the story that they've been in business since 1943. I've been to the old facility. I've been in the new facility. I've driven by the new one. It is staggeringly beautiful, and it is, you can just tell it's modern. But they are still the same people who run the business. They aren't changing. Only thing that's changing is the good. Because now the time you get stuff, get distribution, the more product you can get, the longer or shorter lengths of the product you need, pipe, steel, metal, tubing, whatever it is, channels, rods, flat, they have more options for you at Pioneer Steel and Pipe. They have better opportunities to get things inside whatever you put it in, a pickup truck, a hauler, a trailer, an 18-wheeler, whatever it is, they can do that. New 2,500 square foot showroom, over 1,000 new products in stock. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger, like a football team hopes they are when they start spring drills after a month or two in the weight room following a season of good or disappointment. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Since 1943, they specialize in metal buildings. They have pipe, steel, and metal, and more on the Loop 340 east of 35 in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street behind the bank.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943. Read John's work at gallerysports.com and sportsradio610.com.
He is a Hall of Famer in many ways, and in fact has a lot to do with those who are eventually selected, voted in, inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, where he is as a Hall of Famer. Amazing guy, incredible storyteller, our John McClain. Baylor graduate, Waco, Texas native, and with us on 365 Sports. That might be the nicest, best intro you've ever had.
Yeah, I was wondering who you having on, because it couldn't have been me. I'm thinking, am I on the wrong time? Paul did call me.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, David. That is the nicest thing anybody's ever said about me, and I do appreciate it.
Well, it's true. All right, let's start with ownership. I know that nothing happens fast, but, you know, I saw the note about Magic Johnson wanting to be a part of this group that could buy the Washington Commanders and all that, and that yet nothing may happen until the owners' meetings at the end of April. So this train is down the track, though, right?
It is, and those meetings are next week. They start Sunday in Phoenix, and I'll be there. And people, I think it's Pro Football Talk reported last week that the Snyders had cleared out the facility. Turns out they did that in December. And they have new charges against them. And he asked for $7 billion. The highest bid we know of is by Tillman Fertitta, the Rockets owner, who bid 5.5. But this other group, Josh Harris, Mitchell Rales, they're multi-billionaires. Harris bid on the Broncos, didn't get them. He owns the 76ers. He owns the New Jersey Devils. And that's the group that Magic's trying to buy in with, where Tillman Fertitta is trying to do it himself. And it doesn't matter who buys them. They're going to give him a parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. They'll build him a new stadium. They might build him a statue next to the Lincoln Memorial, because getting rid of Daniel Snyder, who bought that team in 1999, may be the best things ever happened to Washington, D.C. Everybody will celebrate, and you being a fan who has suffered under the Snyder ownership, you'll be one of those turning cartwheels like Roger Goodell will be outside his office on Park Avenue.
Yeah, I wish I could be a fly on the wall for, you know, when he like reads something and it's like, what do I have to deal with now? On Roger Goodell, and he's held a lot of water though for Dan Snyder. Do you think that will tarnish his legacy at all? No,
that's not going to tarnish his legacy. And if it does, who cares? He makes $67 million a year. He's about to get a new 5-year extension. The NFL has grown by leaps and bounds under him. And his job, he works for the owners. They don't work for him. And Snyder, he grew up loving the Washington Redskins. He bought them. At the time, people thought, oh, that's great. We have a fan who bought the team, as compared to Jack Kent Cooke, who won championships but also used it as a toy, and left his son in a terrible situation where he had to sell it. And John Kent Cooke. So everybody thought, wow, Snyder's going to do well. He started off by spending money on old free agents like Deion Sanders and Bruce Smith. Finally, that didn't work. He went through coaches. And it's only like the last 5 years where they've had investigations into him and all these charges of sexual misconduct. And that's been a blemish, not only on the franchise, but on the NFL. But the NFL is too good, too powerful, too popular to suffer because one guy has been kind of a wound that's been festering, and now they want to lance it.
Well, it has been festering. It's 1 year, 2012, when RG3 had that incredible run, and even that ended up in such a sour way. All right, so the Texans get Dalton Schultz, who was with the Cowboys, who they had franchised him. Is the tight end market not very good? Are you surprised he was available with that number in just a 1 year deal?
If he wanted to come back to the Cowboys. Cowboys got a lot of needs, starting with running back, and they got a wide receiver in Brandon Cooks. So the Texans got him and the Bills starting running back, Devin Singletary, on 1 year deals. And that means they're going to get the very best those two's got to offer, because they'll want to sign extensions for millions. Schultz is going to be the best Texans tight end since Owen Daniels, who played during the Gary Kubiak era, and Devin Singletary, he's averaged 850 yards rushing and 38 catches the last 3 years and averaged 4.7 yards a carry. He will really bolster their running game behind Dameon Pierce. So they're really good moves for the Texans, just like I think Brandon Cooks was a good move for the Cowboys to make. And Texans no longer have to worry about a tight end in the draft, and they no longer have to worry about getting a legitimate backup running back. And to get a guy started for three and a half years for the Bills was better than I ever anticipated.
John, do you think, we've talked about it before, quarterback at pick 2, but, just based on the rest of their roster, they could go 12, 33, the other high picks pretty much anywhere they wanted to now, especially with Brandon Cooks gone, and a lot of these deals like Dalton Schultz or Devin Singletary are only short term.
I believe this about the Texans. They had the first, second, and 12th picks. Nick Casario last year traded down and then took Kenyon Green from A&M, who played left guard. I think they will take a defensive lineman, probably an edge rusher, because D'Amico Ryans has talked to us twice about the importance of dominating up front. They are one center from having the best offensive line since the end of the Kubiak era and early in Bill O'Brien's tenure. And defensively, and when Ryans was with the 49ers, he had 3 number 1 picks in the line and none in the back 7. And the Texans don't have a number 1 pick in their defensive line. And so I'm guessing that's going to be the pick, whether he takes the guy at 12 or trades down and does it. Texans have 12 draft choices, and I expect Nick Casario will end up trading some to move up in rounds, because you don't want 12 rookies on your team. That's just too many. And so I do think that would be the position. And then with the second round pick, they could take a wide receiver. This is not a great draft for receivers, but the value begins in the second round and lasts through the third.
Did the Cowboys get a good deal for Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, Brandon Cooks was really good here for his first 2 years. Then last year, he was really tight with Jack Easterby, who may be the most hated man I've ever seen in Houston sports. They bonded when both were with the Patriots. And so when Easterby got fired, Cooks just all of a sudden had a bad attitude, and he never did before. And he quit on his team when he didn't get traded to the Cowboys. So they took away his captaincy. He was out a couple games. They played him again. His best game was the last one, the one they did not want to win, but they did. He had 100 yards and a touchdown catch, and they beat the Colts and lost the top pick in the draft. But I think he'll work really well with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. He's a veteran. He's fast. He's not a take the top off the defense fast, but he's very reliable.
John, do you think the Cowboys' moves overall, Gilmore, Cooks, bringing back their own, they did let a couple guys walk, have been good, and that they're set up in an NFC that is kind of them, Philly, San Francisco, and everybody else right now to do well?
Well, Gilmore is getting older, and he's not a lockdown corner anymore at his age, but he still can play. He's a great guy in the locker room and on the sideline and in the meeting rooms. Good guy to have around. Now, what I can't figure out is the Cowboys, Tony Pollard's coming off major surgery. And what if he's slow to come back? What if he's not ready for the first game, or he's not the same? He doesn't have that quickness that he is so good at, that elusiveness. So what are they going to do for running back? To me, they need to find a Tony Pollard in the draft in the middle round, because they better have some help unless they're going to re-sign Elliott for a lot less money.
You know, the story about Tunsil, now the highest paid offensive lineman from the night of the draft. We were in Chicago. Was that when in Chicago, Paul? And what he dealt with and who he has become. That's just a great story, John. You're great at all sorts of notes about everybody. This guy's just kind of kept himself pretty, I guess, focused, right?
When Laramie Tunsil, when the video came out of him smoking a bong and a gas mask, he dropped to Miami. It cost him a lot of money. And he played there. He played well, started off guard, moved tackle. And Bill O'Brien was obsessed with getting him to play left tackle for the Texans. So he gave up 2 1s and a 2 for Tunsil and a receiver, Kenny Stills, who's no longer in the league. And there were some lesser players involved. And Tunsil came in and he's played really well, other than when he was hurt in 2021. Last year he played every game. He only played once, gave up 1 sack. Pro Football Focus had him as the highest graded offensive tackle in the NFL. They redid his contract in 2020 for $66 million, which made him the highest paid offensive lineman in history. And he told the media during the season his goal was to do that again and pass Trent Williams, and he did. He got 75, and if he gets another extension with 1 year left on this deal, he'll still be only 31 years old. And so he's got a chance to get another one. So he's made a lot of money, and he's done it without an agent. He has 3 financial advisors that he pays by the hour, and they have earned their money.
What do you think happens with Lamar Jackson?
I think he stays with the Ravens. I don't think anybody is going to give him a guaranteed contract like he wants. You know, he has advisors. One of them is not a certified agent, so he's got to be careful. He's calling teams, trying to get teams interested in Jackson. And if Jackson had played the last 2 years and been healthy, he'd have a much better chance. But why would you give a fully guaranteed contract to a guy that's been hurt a lot the last 2 years and hasn't finished either season? He should have taken, and he admitted in social media, he turned down a 3-year guarantee for almost $40 million a year. He should have taken that with the stipulation, you will not tag me when it's up. Then he would have been unrestricted at 29.
John, I got to bring them up. Baylor, they limped into the postseason, then lost to Iowa State in the Big 12, and then, of course, we know they're no longer involved in the tournament. The women gave UConn a nice run last night, but fell short. But not the best little run right now for Baylor athletics as far as in the win-loss column.
Well, I was in Las Vegas at Caesars Palace for the first 2 rounds, and of course I bet on Baylor, and both games, lost against Creighton, but there's no way I was going to bet against Baylor. And then I watched the women last night lead at UConn at halftime, and I figured that was going to evaporate. But it's not the same seeing Baylor teams out of the tournament this early, and then like an idiot, based on how Baylor got beat by Iowa State those last 2 times, I bet on Iowa State, and they were the worst shooting team in the tournament, one of the worst in history, as bad as they were. And so Baylor cost me some more money because I bet on Iowa State because of the way they beat the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. What, Paul? Something?
Oh, yeah, just we have some breaking news once John is done.
Okay.
So.
John, the Texans making moves. The Cowboys are making what seem like pretty smart moves. Is it more of what is trades now than it is free agent signings that are kind of like the landscape of pro football this week or last week?
David, is still free agent signings, but and also there's a lot of players out there, and right now they're going to have to take what the teams are offering instead of teams signing guys to what they're asking for after that initial wave. You can still get some pretty good players, and what you look on trades is guys like Texans got right guard Shaq Mason for a 5 from the Buccaneers, and he'll start immediately. Cowboys get Brandon Cooks for 5 and a 6. You look for guys who are older, who are not looking for any more big contracts, but can still contribute and have cap issues. The Texans are picking up a big portion of Cooks' contract as they've done on some others. And I think that's a wise way to look at it when you're not looking for more than 1 or 2 years.
Thank you, John. We appreciate you as always.
Thank you, guys. Second, and thanks for the intro.
Yes, sir. John McClain, GallerySports.com, Houston 610 among many. He does like 10 to 14 or 15 cut-ins throughout the week, and we've been one of them. I've had John on the show I've been a part of since back in the 90s and appreciate his time. All right. Craig, by the way, just put up a picture of the Allison Indoor going through that makeover he mentioned where they're adding yardage indoors. And I saw Grayson's out at practice with some notes. You could follow them on Twitter for some nuggets from practice.
By the way, Paul Mills has met with his Oral Roberts team a few minutes ago and informed the players he is taking the Wichita State job.
All right, let me tell you something. The Shockers have a pretty good basketball history. Xavier McDaniel, is that right? Mm-hmm. And there's another player from Wichita State that was a heck of a player back in the day.
Look, they've been good. Greg Marshall built him into a good team, but he was a rage monster and had some anger issues, and they fired him. They have gone, and then there's been a coach in between, I know. But Greg Marshall to Paul Mills, vibe-wise, is a 180.
You know, there was a lot of talk about Paul, and Oral Roberts made another run this year, got knocked out quickly. What they did in conference play. So this is a nice move for him. It's a great move, I think, for Wichita State. If you looked at the ones available with Baylor ties, McCaslin was at the top of the list, and Mills. McCaslin's had pretty steady type success. This year they didn't make it to the tournament, but I guess they were in the NIT. So Paul Mills to Wichita State. And then we've heard, again, Jeff Goodman earlier talking about that McCaslin, the leading target for Texas Tech. So there goes that tree, that coaching tree that just branches out a little bit longer, a little bit wider in Wichita State. It was Xavier McDaniel. Who else was the Wichita State elite basketball player? It's driving me crazy. Wichita State men's basketball. This is me with thank God for the internet. I gotta know the other name, like Crenshaw or something. Who are the names of the best players? It's gonna drive me nuts. Yeah, in fact, here's where I know about Wichita State. Stephen F. Austin had a coach back when I was in school. His name was Harry Miller. He was there from 71 to 78. Then he went to Stephen F. Austin. He was very successful. I think his overall record was like 97 and 90, but they were really, really known as being a pretty good team.
Harry Miller that came here?
No, that's a different Harry Miller. Harry Miller went to Stephen F. Austin, and I think he might have been at Arizona State. Antoine Carr, Cliff Levingston is who I was thinking about, and Xavier McDaniel. Those are some bangers from back in the day under the Gene Smithson era. So good for Paul Mills. I'm going to text him and see when he's available. Got to go through Wichita State media relations perhaps for that. So we could have Paul Mills, McCaslin with new jobs before the end of the day. Coming up, Paul Catalina's Top 5. This is 365 Sports.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5 at 5:45. Or is it 5:55? Either way, it's the Top 5.
It's if I talk for 5 more seconds, 6 o'clock, you've got to speed this up.
I do. I mean, it's a we. We're a team here.
No, this is your top 5.
Yeah.
So if we're running late in this segment, you're the one.
Okay. We don't start until 6. It's a team effort on that one. Top 5 first-year offensive coordinators with the most pressure. And we did not get to this today because we had a lot of other stuff going on. But we need to get Sam Kahn on here in the next couple days. He wrote a fantastically interesting column, like he is wont to do because he is very good at that, about the first day of Jimbo Fisher's spring practice and his foray into Bobby Pitino, which we'll get to in a second. But it kind of spurred me on to think about these first-year offensive coordinators are stepping into a situation with a lot of pressure, even though it may not be, like win this or the whole coaching staff leaves pressure. Some of it's different. Number 5, our old friend Philip Montgomery at Auburn. He is stepping into a situation where the fans are absolute crazy town, right? And there are going to be huge expectations for Hugh Freeze year 1. Also, he is stepping into a situation with Hugh Freeze where Hugh Freeze is a guy like Jimbo Fisher who calls the plays. So what is Philip Montgomery's gig here? How does he do that? That's a lot of pressure on a guy. Now, Monty can handle it for sure.
No question.
But it is a very unique situation in that you have a coach who's not probably going to let you call the plays, but might. I don't know. It depends on what happens. And you're in a fan base that if you have 2 kind of not even bad games in a row, but games that are kind of average in a row, it's your torches and pitchforks.
Yeah, you're walking on coals.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Number 4, Tommy Rees at Alabama. I could have put anybody who got this job at Alabama, and there's going to be a lot of pressure. Tommy Rees comes from Notre Dame. He's a young guy. He's outside the Saban tree, which is something he does, too, but he has to adjust to Nick Saban, which Nick Saban will make that as smooth a landing as possible because he's very smart. In spite of his gruff exterior, I'm sure he wants a smooth landing for his coaches. Number 2, an Alabama offense that was really sloppy last year and not what everybody expected, even though they put up points because they have athletes, but they didn't have the wide receivers that they've had in the past. Of course, you can't just keep putting out first-round wide receivers and Heisman Trophy winners in a position that does win the Heisman Trophy and not expect there to be a little bit of a lull. And then wide receiver is maybe the second most, transferable position, right? Where if you are a stud freshman or a sophomore and you've only got 26 catches over the year, then you might get mad and go, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. And Alabama's had that a little bit too in the last couple of years, so they've lost some guys into the portal and lost some more this year. So Tommy Rees has to get Alabama back to that. Not only that, only one of his quarterbacks has played any kind of time, and that's Milroe, who's not really a quarterback that's been in the system or done what Alabama does for a while.
Milroe at times was just like dripping with greatness. And then, of course, he didn't protect the football too many times. But you can see it. But, yeah, he's got it. He needs to get some tread on the tires. But they got, what do they have, like 4 5-star quarterbacks on the depth chart or something like that?
Yeah, they do. They have a lot. But none of them have played that much.
I want Tommy Rees to have success for a couple of 2 or 3 reasons. One, when he left, Notre Dame's reaction was from the fan base, of course this happens. Good. That's good. And I can't imagine Nick Saban bringing somebody in that he doesn't think will mix and work with him.
Okay.
He's pretty good at hiring assistant coaches.
I will say this. If Tommy Rees wins at Alabama or is successful there, he'll be a head coach somewhere.
In 2 or 3 years, yes.
Okay. And then say one day Marcus Freeman moves on. If Tommy Rees is a successful head coach anywhere,
he might be back at
Notre
Notre
Dame.
Dame.
Like, bring him back. He's one of ours.
Man.
Yeah.
Our buddy who's a big Notre Dame fan on the text line, he is not in any way, shape, and or form in any way a guy that like Tommy Rees as a coach. Maybe as a person, but not as a coach.
Yeah. Number 3, Shannon Dawson at Miami steps in from Houston, high-flying offense. I don't know if he has the horses yet to have this much pressure, but they're paying Mario Cristobal a lot of money. That offense was abysmal last year. They got punished by a lot of people, including Middle Tennessee State. Shout out Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where my in-laws live. But they absolutely need some kind of production. Then look, if Miami's not going to win the ACC this year, more than likely. I mean, you never say never, but there are better teams ahead of them in line that are more prepared to do that. They need to show that they're ready to build towards winning the ACC. And that's what Shannon Dawson's job is right now. So It's going to be tough for him. Because, again, the quarterback's up in the air. They didn't really get in the portal all that much. It's kind of nuts when it comes to that. Number 2, Garrett Riley at Clemson. Look, everybody's excited about Garrett Riley. Garrett Riley will probably do great with Cade Klubnik at Clemson. The problem is he's not stepping into Clemson 3 years ago when Clemson was head and shoulders above the rest of the ACC. You've got a team in Tallahassee that's coming. You've got the best quarterback in the league that's in Chapel Hill. You've got to match, what those teams are going to be doing. Not to mention who's going to come out of nowhere in the ACC.
But Paul, yes,
NC State,
all of that.
with
It's
Armstrong,
not Clemson 3 or 4 where they were the absolute dominant team, and the other teams you mentioned were just kind of not sure. He was able to win with Max Duggan. With all due respect to Max Duggan, I would think Klubnik is a much better player as far as
Klubnik got a lot more phone calls.
Yes. But what he was able to do with Duggan was what made it so impressive. And Sonny Dykes, of course, gets a lot of credit for that too.
But there's still a lot of pressure because
they can't let anyone. They were the boat in the water, and the other ones were just like fish. And then they kind of came back down where they're treading water with a couple of them, and now they got to make sure they don't let anybody become the boat.
Well, yeah, especially the team from Tallahassee.
That was a damn good analogy for someone with me with not much brain damage.
I'll tell you, I say FSU, but also don't let Mac Brown taste a little success either. Like if you're the rest of the ACC.
Now he's got to prove there that he can win consistently at North Carolina. It's been a kind of one of these.
But if it is consistent, that's what I'm saying.
He'll take off.
Don't let him do it because he'll take off. And number 1, the guy who inspired this whole thing, Bobby Pitino. And of course, any excuse, I guess, to use this picture that Emory put up there.
All right, that's not. Who put that up there?
Emory did.
Stop.
But Bobby Pitino.
That looks like one of those SEC Shorts videos after a loss.
Now, here's the thing. Jimbo Fisher made me do something today that I've never felt before, as I felt a little bad for Bobby Pitino.
Would you have movement or something? What do you
no, it was just like I thought, it's kind of feel bad for him because when Jimbo Fisher was asked directly, he'd be like, who's going to call the plays? What's the offense going to be like? He responded like it was after they lost to App State last year and he was all mad. And so This is going to be interesting.
He's got to come up with a way to answer that question.
Well, the answer to the question should be threefold. A, who's going to call the plays? B, how the offense is going to change or tweak or what differences. And you don't have to give them specifics, but just you'll see maybe a little more of this and that from us. And 3, yes, I'm doing this because they made me.
Yes, there you go.
I mean, and that's fine. Like, look, I realize that I have, like, and there's not even a way, you don't have to say it that way. I realize that this game has changed and that I need to maybe step back and learn some things. So I'm going to let somebody else call the plays. Guess what? It's called the McCarthy. Mike McCarthy did it, and now he's not. He's learned some things, and now he's back in control. Nobody's saying you can never call the plays again, Jimbo, but everyone else has figured you out. So until you figure them out, you may have to step back. And that's how you say it. That's it. It's easy. Hire me as your PR agent, Jimbo. You make $10 million a year. I'll only charge you $3.
I am protesting the graphic. Emory, no food for you for a month. No more pizzas, no more whatever I bring to the table. That was unfair to Bobby Pitino. That's like, you know what I'm talking about with the SEC shorts, right? Those videos, that guy does an incredible job. I bet he could just do that and be a millionaire. And that would be one of the pictures after, like, if Pitino was coaching somewhere and they lose, they would use that. All right, Paul, thank you very much on that. Baylor football, Craig's over there, Grayson's over there. Thanks to all of you in the chat room. I haven't had a chance to get involved in that as much today. The text line, I've tried to respond to those of you who are in the text line today. And then, of course, thanks to Jack McKenzie. Garrett Ross runs the mothership. Tomorrow, I know we have Mac Rhodes. Tomorrow, we have our NFL draft analyst, John Cooper. Tomorrow, we have, might have Paul Mills now, the new head coach at Wichita State, and maybe by tomorrow it's Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech. But we've got a lot. Oh, Khalil Keith, former Baylor lineman, will join us in the studio tomorrow, along with a lot more. I'm David Smoak. Thanks to our amazing sponsors. We're barreling down on 3 years here with 365 Sports, coming up on April the 6th. Have a great night and good night.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas.